down and out, riddled with doubt, had nowhere to go. Everything's moving so slow, the time's moving too fast. I hope this feeling don't last. Well, I've been away from myself too long. My body is aching from all my wrongs. And now that I know I'm not that strong, I'll keep slipping on to you. I'll keep slipping until my time is through. I'll keep slipping on to you, yeah, on to you.
I am the devil. I am the Lord Satan from the netherworld, ruler of the damned and eternal king of hell. Even I, the master of deceit, can only stomach so much bullshit from the mainstream media and indie grifters. That's why I tune in to Morning Extra with Uncle Warren, because he eliminates my competition, and also because I know I'm gonna see that motherfucker soon.
Deo, Deo.
Baby's got a booger and a shooter and that naked all go down. Baby's got a booger and a shooter and that shit all go down. Corrosion to her thighs, erosion of her pride. Baby's got a shooter, baby's got corrosion now, baby's got it.
Good morning, Cleveland. It is I, Letterman. Happy Halloween. Oh, wait a minute. It's wrong. Wrong holiday. Is it really a holiday though today? April 1st. A lot of fools. Seems like every day is April Fools, right? Like, hey, we're gonna do something good for you. Nah. Hey, April Fools. We're evil as fuck. You're like, oh, we were so close. Yes, it is April 1st. I hope everything is going well for you. Oi, oi, at work, but can still listen. Anonymous, good to see you. We got Chuck's Intergalactic UFO Show Intergalactic. I think he's got another episode coming up pretty soon. So watch out for that. It's coming. That's no fooling. Max RJ in the house. Good to see you, my friend. And Steve G. Is it? See, you scolded me the other day. Said I was saying you first. You said I said it right, and then you said I'm saying it wrong. So is it Steve G or is it Steve G? Because G is funner to say. But you tell me. Global, good to see you. We got Kate's in the house too, and Miguel off the top there. Go start over there, rocking and rolling on Rumble. Just our lurkers so far on the old Rockfin there. Let me do something real quick. No, you're not good? Okay, there we go. All right. Today's April 1st. I wish I was fooling about this news that we got coming up. But I am not, unfortunately. It's a lot of bad news. So, what else do you expect? From somebody like me. Before we go, get started, I just want to remind you about our buddy Kevin over at Black Bear News. If you could help him out with his GoFundMe, he lost his home in the LA fires, and every little bit helps. If you can't donate, if you can at least share out the link, it's in the description down below here on the YouTubes. I think it's on the other ones too. It should be in Rockfin and Rumble and on the Facebooks too. The Book of Faces. It's all in there. So help out our buddy Kevin. He's still doing shows. I mean, he set up somewhere else, and that's good that he had some place to go to. But man, I couldn't imagine the amount of stuff that he's collected over the years, and then it just poof like that. So my heart goes out to him. Anybody that has to go through that. And my heart goes out to the people of South Texas, too, as they've been dealing with torrential rains down there, to say the least. At least 4 dead, hundreds rescued after deadly floods ravaged South Texas. Look at that shit. Incredible. Severe flooding in South Texas has left at least 4 people dead and forced emergency crews to rescue hundreds of people from rising waters. State officials said the Rio Grande Valley endured more than half a year's worth of rain half a year, 6 months worth of rain within the span of 48 hours, 2 days, leading to submerged roads and waterlogged vehicles. Hidalgo County reported at least 3 deaths on Friday, although not much information was immediately available. Hidalgo County, pardon me, I always get the thing when I start talking. I don't know what it is. Hidalgo County Judge Richard Cortez issued a declaration of local disaster that same day, stating parts of the region saw up to 14 inches of rain. Unfortunately, many areas of our county have experienced some flooding, Cortez said in a video posted to social media on Friday. It's really pretty devastating. All the resources that are available are being put to use to try to mitigate the consequences of this flooding as fast as we can. According to the Associated Press, another death was reported in the Mexican state of Tamaulipas, located near the U.S.-Mexico border, bringing the death toll up to at least 4. The extreme rainfall also pummeled parts of northeastern Mexico, with the region seeing between 7 and 12 inches of rain, according to the AP. U.S. Customs and Border Protection also reported a death, but as of Monday afternoon, it wasn't clear whether this death was among those previously reported. According to reporting from AP, federal agents approached a vehicle suspected of being involved in human smuggling that was stopped at a flooded road, but the driver plunged into a canal after attempting to traverse the high waters. The agency said the body of one person who drowned was recovered and another was missing. On Saturday, Governor Greg Abbott issued a disaster declaration for Cameron, Starr, Willacy, and Hidalgo counties, the hardest hit areas in South Texas, according to state officials. Cities like Alamo, located in Hidalgo County, reported more than 100 water rescues last week. Officials in Harlingen reported more than 200 rescues had been conducted, while the city of Weslaco reported 30 to 40 water rescues, according to the Texas Tribune. Abbott urged people to report flood damage to the state to help officials assess the full scope of the disaster and determine what additional resources may be needed for affected communities. Texans can report damages by visiting damage.tdem.texas.gov. That's damage.tdem.texas.gov if you're listening from Texas and you need some help. The storm's impact extends beyond cities and towns, hitting South Texas farms hard, according to Texas Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller, who said the flooding posed a severe threat to the drought-ridden region's agriculture and livestock. For years, the South Texas farmers have struggled through persistent water shortages. Well, yeah, I guess that's over for now. Unfortunately, according to Miller, the rain fell downstream of the Rio Grande River and is unlikely to replenish water levels in the driest areas of the region. Well, while rain was desperately needed, the sheer volume that has fallen in this region has caused severe harm, Miller said on Friday. Yeah, you kind of don't want thousands and thousands of gallons of water at once like that. So hopefully, I think I still have peoples in Texas. So if you're down there, just be careful. All right, don't get out in that. There's nasty chemicals in the water too. It's disgusting. Meanwhile, around the world, rescuers are racing the clock as Myanmar earthquake death toll climbs past 2,000. And there's some of the damage there. Yeah, that earthquake was no joke for sure. Myanmar has raised the death toll from last week's devastating earthquake to more than 2,000. The country's military-led government announced on Monday that the casualty count had grown to 2,056 people, with a further 3,900 injured, and declared a week-long mourning period. Meanwhile, the search and rescue effort was reportedly being slowed by a lack of resources and equipment and damaged infrastructure. The magnitude 7.7 earthquake hit Myanmar at midday on Friday local time, causing widespread damage, including in the capital Naypyidaw, A second magnitude 6.4 tremor followed shortly afterwards. The earthquake's epicenter was about 11 miles west of the country's second largest city, Mandalay, which has a population of nearly 1.5 million. Government spokesman Major General Zaw Min Tun told state-run MRTV on Monday that 270 people are missing in the Mandalay region, where tremors damaged infrastructure like mosques, bridges, and the city's airport. The earthquake also shook neighboring Thailand and killed at least 18 people there, many at a construction site in Bangkok where a partially built high-rise collapsed. Rescuers have expressed concern that the effort to find survivors is facing problems and noted that most survivors need to be rescued within 3 days of such a disaster if they are to live, although there's been rare cases where it's been longer, but, that's pretty rare. Myanmar's neighbors, including India, China, Malaysia, and Singapore, have dispatched aircraft and warships carrying relief supplies. And I believe the United States is sending money to them too. Wai Phao, a rescue worker in Myanmar, told Al Jazeera that recovery teams in Mandalay were doing their best, but were overwhelmed by the scale of destruction and the lack of proper equipment. The true number of people killed and injured across the region is probably many times the official figure, but with telecommunication outages, little is known about the damage in many areas. So there's some more damage right there. I don't know if you've ever been in an earthquake, if you ever lived in Cali or lived anywhere along a fault line, but I've been in a couple, but just very minor. Shakes the glasses in the cabinet a little bit, but nothing crazy, right? But to just have like a whole building collapse around you like that is just. It's fucking insane. So, what else is insane is all these deportations going on right now. Hey, Bella, good morning. Good to see you. You're a human? April Fools. Everybody knows you're not a human. Stop it. You're human. You're human, as the Ferengi like to say. Trump administration says it deported 17 more violent criminals to El Salvador because, sure, Hamas. Oh, wait, that's something else. The Trump administration said yesterday that it has deported 17 more violent criminals from the Tren de Aragua and MS-13 gangs to El Salvador as it doubles down on a policy of removing people from the U.S. to countries other than their own, despite criticism over a lack of transparency in human rights issues. The State Department said the immigrants were removed Sunday night. The statement said murderers and rapists were among them, but didn't give details of the nationalities or alleged crimes of those removed, of course, because they never do. The office of El Salvador President Nayib Bukele, however, said Salvadorans and Venezuelans were among the prisoners. These criminals will no longer terrorize our communities and citizens, Secretary of State and Waterboy Marco Rubio said in a statement. Once again, we extend our gratitude to President Bukele and the government of El Salvador for their unparalleled partnership. The men were flown to El Salvador by the U.S. military, the State Department said, as seen in video from the Salvadoran government. They were transported by bus to El Salvador's maximum security prison, changed into the prison's standard white T-shirts and shorts, and had their heads shaven. They were walked by guards into a cell block, the video shows, and some were made to kneel upon the floor with their wrists cuffed behind their backs and ankles shackled. Guards put one or both hands on the men's necks and forced them to walk quickly, while bent at the waist and shackled with their heads down. Some men in the video grunted from the exertion, and one appeared to vomit on the floor while listening to instructions. Or he was probably listening to one of my alt-rock albums from the 80s. More than 200 Venezuelan immigrants facing deportation were sent to El Salvador earlier this month and are also being held in the maximum security prison. Shit-faced McGee Donald Trump has deported immigrants of various nationalities to other countries in Central America, But El Salvador is the only country where the U.S. is sending people so they can be imprisoned there. Bukele offered to jail immigrants the U.S. wanted to deport, regardless of nationality, during a February meeting with Rubio. On Monday evening, Trump thanked Bukele and told reporters, "I got elected on the basis of getting bad people out of our country that shouldn't be here." But yet he still remains. Isn't that funny how that works? He's the king of irony, folks. Trump has claimed the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua is invading the U.S. and invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. He also invoked the Spanish Inquisition because, as everyone knows, no one expects the Spanish Inquisition, a wartime authority that allows the president broader leeway on policy and executive action to speed up mass deportations. He sent dozens of people to El Salvador before a judge barred further deportations under the Act's authority. The administration is now asking the Supreme Court to allow it to resume those deportations. The State Department, the Department of Homeland Security, and the Department of Defense, which handled the removal Sunday, did not give detailed information about who was on the flight, their alleged crimes, or under what legal authority they were removed from the country. Immigration and civil rights advocates have challenged the Trump administration's deportations of people to countries other than their own, saying they first need to be given the opportunity to say whether they fear persecution or torture there. Advocates have also sued to prevent use of the Alien Enemies Act. Go away. Nobody asked for you. Let's see. A federal judge on Friday temporarily blocked the Trump administration from deporting people to third countries without first being allowed to argue that it would jeopardize their safety. The judge ruled that people with final orders of removal must have a meaningful opportunity to argue that being sent to a country other than their own presents a level of danger deemed worthy of protection. On Sunday, the Trump administration asked the court to reverse itself and gave guidance that Homeland Security uses to determine whether someone can be removed to a third country. Anwen Hughes, a lawyer with Human Rights First, one of the groups suing the government, said Monday her team is still trying to get information about the Sunday removals, including the nationalities of those involved and what authority was used to remove them. In general, Hughes said when immigrants are deported to their own country, they're likely to understand the conditions there, and they usually have family or friends to help them. When sent elsewhere, they're often in a position of vulnerability because they don't know what country, don't know that country or have the rights of a citizen, which is probably why they sent them to El Salvador. Because, they're not big on rights. On Monday, lawyers hired by the Venezuelan government to represent Venezuelans deported from the U.S. and jailed in El Salvador said they had petitioned El Salvador's human rights ombudsman, that was my old job, to verify that their clients were being held at the maximum security gang prison. Neither the U.S. nor the Salvadorian government have released a list of those who were deported to and imprisoned in El Salvador earlier in March. Secret black site prisons. Lawyer Jamie Ortega said their petition also asked the ombudsman to check their health and affirm whether those who need it are receiving medical attention. Last week, the law firm filed habeas corpus petitions on behalf of 30 of the more than 200 Venezuelans sent to El Salvador. Asked about the additional Venezuelans sent Sunday, the lawyers said they had no information. Ortega insisted that the U.S. still had yet to share any evidence that the prisoners were criminals. Probably won't either. Also on Monday, a federal judge paused Trump administration plans to end temporary legal protections for hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans a week before they were scheduled to expire. So speaking of which, a federal judge on Monday paused plans by the Trump administration to end temporary legal protections for hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans a week before they were scheduled to expire. The order by U.S. District Judge Edward Chen in San Francisco is a relief for 350,000 Venezuelans whose temporary protected status was set to expire April 7th after Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem reversed protections granted by the Biden administration. Chen said in his ruling that the action by Noam threatens to inflict irreparable harm on hundreds of thousands of persons whose lives, families, and livelihoods will be severely disrupted, cost the United States billions in economic activity, and injure public health and safety in communities throughout the United States. To which the administration said, what do we care, right? He said the government had failed to identify any real countervailing harm in continuing TPS for Venezuelan beneficiaries, and said plaintiffs will likely succeed in showing that Noam's actions are unauthorized by law, arbitrary and capricious, and motivated by unconstitutional animus. In other words, the Republican platform. Chen, who was appointed to the bench by President Barack Obama, a shithead piece of fuck, lying piece of crap, piece of shit, said his order in the lawsuit brought by the National TPS Alliance applies nationally. Noam had also announced the end of TPS for an estimated 250,000 additional Venezuelans in September. The judge gave the government 1 week to file notice of an appeal and the plaintiffs 1 week to file to pause for 500,000 Haitians whose TPS protections are set to expire in August. Alejandro Mayorkas, the previous secretary, had extended protections for all three cohorts in 2026. Spirit of the age. Good morning, brother man. I hope you are doing well over there on the Rumble. Today is a good day for the migrant community in this country, said Pablo Alvarado, co-executive director of the National Day Labor Organizing Network. He said that people fleeing war-torn El Salvador who initially benefited from the TPS program fought to maintain protections that came to include countries such as Ukraine, Sudan, and Syria, and the broader community must continue fighting. It takes so much courage to come forward and say, here I am, and I'm going to fight for this, Alvarado said. We're not going to throw anyone under the bus. We're going to fight for everyone because everyone is deserving. The Department of Homeland Security did not immediately respond to a request for comment. No shit. Congress created TPS, as the law is known, in 1990 to prevent deportations to countries suffering from natural disasters or civil strife, giving people authorization to live and work in the U.S. in increments of up to 18 months. If the Homeland Security Secretary deems conditions in their home countries are unsafe for return, even though our foreign policy is probably making those countries unsafe for return, but I digress. The reversals are a major about-face from immigration policies under former President Sleepy Joe and come as Republican Orange Man Bad and his top aides have ratcheted up attacks on judges who rule against them, with immigration being at the forefront of many disagreements. At a hearing last Monday, lawyers for TPS holders said that Noam has no authority to cancel protections and that her actions were motivated in part by racism. They asked the judge to pause Noam's orders, citing the irreparable harm to TPS holders struggling with fear of deportation and potential separation from family members. Government lawyers for Noam said the Congress gave the Secretary clear and broad authority to make determinations related to the TPS program and that the decisions were not subject to judicial review. Plaintiffs have no right to thwart the Secretary's orders from being carried out, they said. But Chen found the government's arguments unpersuasive and said that numerous derogatory and false comments by Noam and by Trump against Venezuelans as criminals show that racial animus was a motivator in ending protections. Acting on the basis of a negative group stereotype and generalizing such stereotype to the entire group is the classic example of racism, he wrote. Biden sharply expanded use of TPS and other temporary forms of protection in a strategy to create and expand legal pathways to live in the United States while suspending asylum for those who enter illegally. Rick, how you doing, brother? Hope you're doing okay down there in Tejas. Trump has questioned the impartiality of a federal judge who blocked his plans to deport Venezuelan immigrants to El Salvador, leveling his criticism only hours before his administration asked an appeals court to lift the judge's order. The administration has also said it was revoking temporary protections for more than 530,000 Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans, as we told you, who have come to the U.S. since October 2022 through another legal avenue called humanitarian parole, which Biden used more than any other president. Their 2-year work permits will expire April 24th. So, yeah, there are more people getting kicked out, and the judges are overturning these rulings, but the scary part is they're defying the judge's orders, or at least using slick loopholes to do so. Oh, look who showed up here. We got Stephanie. Miss Stephanie, how you doing? Booyah! Booyah! And Willie Bragg. Willie showing his picture when he was 16 on Facebook. I thought that was so nice. I was like, that's a bad motherfucker. I wouldn't have messed with you when you were 16. You were like, you motherfuckers. I'll kill all of you in your sleep. Good to see you, my man. Yeah. What's up, Desert Mantis? Good to see you. Is that really Willie, or is it Rick playing an April Fool's prank on us? That's right. There's all kinds of jokers today, so watch out. And like I said earlier, this is just a day for people to lie to other people and get away with it, or as the government calls it, Tuesday. So Trump's dumbass tariffs that's going to only fuck us in the ass go into effect tomorrow. But Trump says reciprocal tariffs to target all countries. So there he is signing somebody's manga. Shithead announced that his reciprocal tariffs will target all countries, breaking expectations that only certain countries will be targeted, according to a report by Al Jazeera yesterday. Trump told reporters aboard Air Force One on Sunday that he would start with all nations when he announces his long-awaited tariff decision tomorrow. You would start with all countries, he said, essentially all the countries that we're talking about. Trump, who put a 25% tariff on all auto imports last week, has long accused other nations of taking advantage of the U.S. in trade. Well, it's because everything's made outside the United States, dumbass. What do you think? We don't produce shit in this country except misery. On the other hand, Trump had previously hinted at softer tariffs last week, saying he would give a lot of countries some breaks. I may give a lot of countries breaks, but that's reciprocal. We might be even nicer than that, We've been very nice to a lot of countries for a long time, but I call it Liberation Day. Liberation Day. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. April 2nd, Liberation Day. April 2nd is Liberation Day. Make sure you have your pinatas full of candy, Trump said, referring to his deadline when his reciprocal tariff agenda goes global. We may take less than what they're charging because they've charged us so much. I don't think they could take it. In other words, they've charged us so much, I'm embarrassed to charge them what they charged us, but it'll be substantial. And you'll be hearing about that on April 2nd, he added. With tariffs, the U.S. president seeks to revive the U.S. domestic manufacturing and create jobs, particularly with the car industry, but in reality, he's just being a total cunt and pissing off the world and possibly getting us nuked if he doesn't watch out. Standard operating procedure, I guess. But wait, there's more. You get these free steak knives, and federal workers union sues Trump over attack on collective bargaining. Yes, indeed. A union that represents employees across 37 federal agencies and offices yesterday sued Shithead McGee and various leaders in his administration over an executive order that aims to strip collective bargaining rights from hundreds of thousands of government workers under the guise of protecting national security. The National Treasury Employees Union, the NTEU, filed the federal lawsuit in Washington, D.C., arguing that the order issued by Trump last week is not only illegal, but also motivated by a policy objective of making federal employees easier to fire and political animus against federal sector unions. many of which have vocally resisted Trump's legally dubious attacks on agencies and key programs. Sorry, Stephanie. Yeah, I know. Liberation 2. April 2nd. Judgment Day. Get to the chopper. The law plainly gives federal employees the right to bargain collectively, and the shocking executive order abolishing that right for most of them under the guise of national security is an attempt to silence the voices of our nation's public servants, said NTEU National President Doreen Greenwald in a statement. Just a little side commentary here about that. Yes, I think a lot of those public servants should have union protection, but I don't think the police should. I don't think the police unions are legal at all because they blackmail cities into making sure that they're never cut, their funds are never cut, and they don't police their own. So it's really fucked up. Amber, what's up? I tried watching this on Facebook and it was fucking with me after I accidentally exited. So what's up, everybody? Okay, well, you're always welcome over here on the tubes. We come one, come all to the midnight ball. It's also a continuation of the administration's efforts to deny the American people the vital services that these talented civil servants provide by making it easier to fire them without any pushback from their union advocates. Greenwald vowed that NTEU intends to protect the ability of frontline federal employees to stand together to improve the conditions under which they serve the American people. Federal workers around the country, through their unions, advocate for the tools and resources they need to do their jobs and help their agencies accomplish important public service missions, and we will not allow the administration to distort the truth. So there's that. The complaint filed Monday argues that the new order? Oh, wait, I'm thinking of Joy Division. Never mind. Plainly punishes NTEU for its legal challenges to this administration's actions, canceling as relevant here 12 of NTEU's collective bargaining relationships, including NTEU's largest and longest one, Giggity, at the Internal Revenue Service. Well, I don't really care about them. The agency's acting commissioner and chief counsel are listed as plaintiffs. The NTEU is also suing the U.S. Attorney General, the Federal Communications Commission chair, the Bureau of the Fiscal Service Commissioner, the acting comptroller of the currency. I want to comptroller of the currency. That sounds made up. The acting directors of the Bureau of Land Management and the Office of Personnel Management, the administrators of the Environmental Protection Agency, and the the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, and the Energy Secretary, Treasury, and Health and Human Services Secretaries. As The Hill reported Monday, the suit filed in Washington, D.C. comes as the Trump administration took the unusual move of filing its own legal action in Texas last week, making the first move in litigation by asking a judge to declare as legal its plans to terminate the contracts. That suit was filed in a single-judge district in Texas, possibly setting the stage for a square-off in the Supreme Court. You know, when I read this before and I saw Texas, I thought for sure it says square dance. You know, that spread your partner round and round and swing her up and throw her down and put her in the trash can, let her go and watch out with do and yeah, I should probably lay off the booze or drink more. The Trump administration's filing in Texas targets another key union, the American Federation of Government Employees, or AFG, Steve, AFG, according to Federal News Network. What is that? Federal News Network. During a Friday press conference, AFGE National President Everett Kelly called the executive order plainly retaliatory and pledged to keep challenging the administration. I'm just seeing things. I thought that said plainly retarded for a second. I'm like, okay, all right, that's probably not it. The executive order says plainly that they are taking this action because AFGE is standing up for our members, Kelly said, but I want to assure everybody that AFGE will always stand up for its members. Very nice. Good for you. So yeah, and folks, you think, well, if we could have got a third party candidate in the White House, they said, well, they could just do these executive orders and do all this stuff. You're seeing what happens with these executive orders when you don't make them law. The courts are going to overturn them. Especially these rotten ass judges. Get out in the streets. The fuck voting. That's some bullshit. So, the whole Signalgate thing from last week, Trump's just kind of doing, not me, well, nothing to see here, folks, as White House dismisses investigation calls, says case closed on Signalgate. Of course they would. That's like the cops investigating themselves. We didn't find anything. The White House has said that it is moving on from a recent controversy over the mistaken sharing of war plans, on commercial messaging app Signal, declaring that the case has been closed. Spokesperson Caroline Leavitt said on Monday that steps had been taken to ensure that the same scenario, which made Jeffrey Goldberg, editor of The Atlantic, privy to a group chat on planned U.S. strikes on Yemen's Houthis, was not repeated in the future, but she did not elaborate on the measures. She said, we're going to be using Grubhub next time. Leavitt said the U.S. was moving forward, her statement appearing to end speculation that National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, who invited the journalist to the chat, and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, who shared the sensitive information, would be punished. Yeah, don't worry about the war crimes that they talked about in that chat. That was, everybody got to see. Democratic lawmaker Madeline Dean accused Republicans of showing a weakness of thought by deflecting away from the blunders of the so-called Signalgate controversy. The Trump administration's mishandling of sensitive military plans was a staggering failure, she wrote in a social media post. Republicans have devolved into whataboutism. It's time for accountability. It's time for answers. Yeah, well, but when you talk about Israel to the Democrats, you get a lot of whataboutism too. On this bitch. The fuck? Is that it? No. As the White House attempted to close the embarrassing chapter, U.S. President Donald Trump renewed his threats to the Houthis, targeting over attacks against Israel and Red Sea shipping lanes conducted in support of Gaza, promising to hit them harder and harder. Right. Houthi leaders have denied U.S. claims that their capabilities have been degraded by attacks, saying that the strikes have only managed to kill civilians and administrative officials. Well, that's because they're targeting civilians and administrative officials and not actual troops or weapons. The choice for the Houthis is clear. Stop shooting at U.S. ships. And we will stop shooting at you, said Trump in a social media post. Otherwise, we have only just begun, and the real pain is yet to come for both the Houthis and their sponsors in Iran, who are not their sponsors. As Iran, for its part, responded to Trump's previous message that it will face heavy U.S. bombardment if it fails to reach a nuclear weapons deal. We'll talk about that more in a second. And Trump intends to visit Saudi Arabia in mid-May to discuss a range of topics, including Russia's 3-year-old war in Ukraine, the war in Gaza, and investments, according to sources cited by the Reuters news agency and Axios. Saudi Arabia recently hosted U.S.-mediated talks with Russia and Ukraine aimed at ending the war, but prospects of a ceasefire appeared to dim after Russian President Vladimir Putin said that his Ukrainian counterpart, Volodymyr Zelensky, lacked the legitimacy to sign a peace deal, prompting Trump to declare in an interview with NBC that he was very angry, pissed off with the Russian leader. Well, he's got a point. The guy isn't officially the president there. He just, like a dictator, took over the country. But he's really just a Western puppet. So the West really took over the government. Trump added that if he were unable to negotiate an end to the war in Ukraine and determined Russia was to blame, he would impose a 25% secondary tax on all Russian oil. Addressing the state of U.S.-Russian relations on Monday, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov indicated in comments carried by Russia's Interfax news agency that Moscow was working on implementing certain ideas related to Ukrainian conflict resolution, though there was no specific progress to report yet. Peskov also said Putin is still open to speaking with Trump and that a conversation could be arranged as needed, according to TASS, the news agency. Yeah, so, and speaking of the Houthis down another U.S. MQ-9 Reaper drone amid U.S. airstrikes on Yemen. So, yeah, they're not backing down. As U.S. airstrikes continue to pound Yemen, the Houthis, officially known as Ansar Allah, announced that its forces downed another U.S. MQ-9 Reaper drone that was flying over Yemeni territory. Our air defenses successfully shot down an American MQ-9 Reaper drone that you paid for, well, public funds paid for, while it was carrying out hostile missions in the airspace of Marib Governorate using a suitable locally made missile, the Yemeni Air Forces said in a statement early this morning. So far, there's been no confirmation from the U.S. military that it lost a drone. Of course not. Propaganda. Since shit had restarted the U.S. bombing campaign in Yemen on March 15th, the U.S. military has shared virtually no details about its airstrikes or Houthi attacks on U.S. warships and aircraft. Interesting, huh? Ghost Start, what's up, buddy? I thought I said hi to you. Oh, you're over. Okay, never mind. I'm seeing things. The YAF statement said that the incident marked the 16th U.S. MQ-9 drone that's been shot down by Houthi forces since October 2023. The U.S. military has acknowledged it has lost several drones over Yemen, but hasn't confirmed each claim. Each MQ-9 Reaper drone cost the U.S. about $30 million. The thing what you could do with $30 million, besides piss it away on some bullshit drone. So if the Houthis number is accurate, that means the U.S. has lost $480 million worth of drones. The YAF statement said that over the past few years, the U.S. has launched a number of raids on various areas, resulting in murders, injuries, and damage to citizens' properties. The U.S. airstrikes have been hitting Yemen every day since March 15th, but the Houthis show no sign of backing down. Asshole has claimed his bombing campaign has been a success despite the repeated Houthi attacks on U.S. warships and on Israel, which restarted once the U.S. started bombing Yemen again. Just a few hours before the Houthis announced they downed another U.S. MQ-9, Trump claimed that the Yemeni group has been decimated by the relentless strikes over the past 2 weeks and threatened the situation would escalate if attacks from Yemen didn't stop. The message from the Houthis has been that they will meet U.S. escalation with escalation and won't stop unless there's a ceasefire in Gaza and an end to the Israeli blockade on the Palestinian territory. The Yemeni armed forces affirm that they will persist to prevent Israeli navigation in the Red and Arabian Seas and will continue to support the Palestinian people until the aggression against Gaza stops and the blockade is lifted, the YAF statement says. Yes, very resilient people there in Yemen. And of course, the military is not going to say, well, we're just wasting money just bombing these people. They don't seem to want to stop. Here's some more money, motherfuckers. Yeah, I mean, we're close to a $1 trillion budget. Where's Doge? Huh? Hey, Doge. I thought you were looking for government waste. I didn't add this story, but apparently there's all kinds of people protesting at Tesla dealerships or something around the country, some around the world too. Meanwhile, the hell never stops in Gaza as Israeli military orders full evacuation of Gaza's southern city of Rafah. The Israeli military yesterday ordered the forced evacuation of the southern Gaza city of Rafah and other nearby areas as it's ramping up attacks on the Palestinian territory. Aviche Adre, the IDF's Arabic language spokesman, ordered the residents of Rafah and surrounding areas to flee to Al-Mawasi, a tent camp on the coast that had been designated as a so-called humanitarian safe zone, but has been frequently targeted by Israeli attacks. Adre said the Israeli military is returning to fight with great force to eliminate the capabilities of terrorist organizations, Hamas, in these areas. Shortly after issuing the evacuation order, the IDF began attacking Rafah, killing at least 2 people, according to Al Jazeera. Look at all these terrorists. Look at that terrorist right there. Motherfuckers. Israel launched a major assault on Rafah in May 2024, which President Biden insisted at the time would be limited, just like his time being awake. But the attack left the city in ruins. Since then, Israel has controlled the Rafah border crossing and the Philadelphia corridor on the Egypt-Gaza border. The Israeli military was supposed to withdraw from the Philadelphia corridor at the end of the first phase of the ceasefire, but it never did. Surprise, surprise! One of Israel's many violations of the truce deal. The renewed assault on the city is seen as an effort by Israel to expand its buffer zone, which refers to the land inside Gaza that's occupied by the IDF. Also on Monday, Palestinians in Khan Yunis held a funeral procession for 15 medics who were killed by Israeli forces in Rafah about a week earlier. Among the dead were 8 members of the Palestine Red Crescent Society, 6 Gaza civil defense workers, and 1 UN staffer. The rescue workers went missing and were later found buried in a mass grave in Rafah. Mahmoud Basal, a spokesman for the PRCS, said there were at least around 20 multiple gunshots in each one of them. 20 gunshots in each one of them. Israeli occupation forces brutally, savagely executed the civil defense teams, Basal said. His grave was located just meters from their vehicles, indicating the occupation forces removed the victims from the vehicles, executed them, and then discarded their bodies in the pit, Basal added. So Gaza medics killed by Israel found handcuffed and shot in mass graves. Yeah. So here you go. Here's an April Fool's for you. Israeli forces have been accused of executing handcuffed Palestinian medics before burying them in a mass grave underneath their crushed ambulances in southern Gaza's Rafah, as we just told you. They blame Hamas for their murder. 15 humanitarian workers went missing last week after responding to a distress call from civilians being attacked by Israeli forces. So as we said, those members of the Red Crescent Society, Palestine Civil Defense, and they were found in a mass grave. Ashraf Nasser Abu Labda was among the paramedics killed. My son volunteered to help the wounded. He did not receive a salary. He loved his work and he was dedicated to it, his mother told Middle East Eye. The Israeli army said that this second war was not a war against Gaza. They claimed it was a war targeting terrorists, she said, but they are the treacherous. They have no honor, no word, no pact, no agreements, no integrity. They do not respect any laws or customs. You goddamn right, lady. Abdullah Labda's brother said that his slain sibling was not carrying a weapon, but was carrying a stretcher to rescue people. Holding his infant nephew, the brother told Middle East Eye, what is his child's fault that he must grow up without his father? Well, that kid's Hamas too, you know. They're going to come after him too. The Palestinian Health Ministry said some of the bodies were found with their hands tied and with wounds in their heads and chests. Israeli occupation forces brutally savagely executed the civil defense teams. He added the humanitarian workers were buried in a mass grave 2 to 3 meters deep in an attempt to conceal the crime, which I don't get, because they just take their phones and they document their crimes. They have such hubris, they know they're not going to be punished. But even this was probably too much for them. They probably like, oh, we better cover this up. This grave was located just meters from their vehicles, as we said, as indicating that they were removed from the vehicles, executed, and then discarded. This scene represents one of the most brutal massacres Gaza has witnessed in modern history. The health ministry condemned Israeli forces for the heinous crime and called for an international investigation. Yeah, good luck with that. Even if you do get an international investigation, they've already got war crimes and crimes against humanity slapped on them already. What's a few more, right? You double dipping? Oh, I see. The PRCS said it was devastated by the killing of its paramedics who were targeted by the Israeli occupation forces while performing their humanitarian duties. Jonathan Whitall, head of the UN's Humanitarian Affairs Office in Palestine, said the mass grave was marked with the emergency light from one of the crushed ambulances. The killings are the single deadliest attack on Red Cross, Red Crescent workers anywhere in the world since 2017, according to the International Committee of the Red Cross. In a series of posts on the tweeters, Whitall explained what happened. On March 23rd, 10 PRCS and 6 civil defense first responders were dispatched to the area in Rafah where Israeli forces had advanced to collect the wounded. Israeli forces then struck the 5 ambulances and the fire truck along with a UN vehicle that arrived later. Contact was lost with them. The Israeli military said in an initial statement that trucks were struck because they were being used by Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. There we go. We finally get our first peek at Hamas in their excuses today. I don't know where you had that on your bingo card, but congratulations if you won. Both groups deny using ambulances for military purposes. After 5 days of attempting to coordinate with the Israeli military to reach the area, UN teams were granted permission. Whitall said. The UN teams encountered hundreds of civilians fleeing under gunfire and witnessed a woman shot in the back of the head, he added. When a young man tried to retrieve her, he too was shot. We were able to recover her body using our UN vehicle, he said. 6 days after losing contact with the first responders, UN teams found the ambulances, the fire truck, and the UN vehicle crushed and partially buried. After hours of digging, we recovered one body, a civil defense worker beneath his fire truck, Whitall said. The recovered body on Friday was that of Anwar Abdul Hamid al-Attar, a humanitarian mission officer. Give me a justification. I need a reason. What did he do? A weeping relative Attar told Middle East Eye after his body was discovered. He left behind a 4-year-old at home waiting for him. Where can I bring him back from for her? What can I give her? Whitall said they were killed in their uniforms, driving their clearly marked vehicles, wearing their gloves, on their way to save lives. This should have never happened. There's the graves right there. There's the twisted, mangled vehicles. Israel's military said it had carried out an initial assessment which found that its troops had shot at several vehicles advancing suspiciously towards Israeli troops without headlights or emergency signals. Kind of like when the cops say, oh yeah, he was coming at me, and he was just walking down the sidewalk. It said that the movement of vehicles had not been coordinated with Israel's military in advance. They didn't say Simon Says, and that the area was an active combat zone, even though they're clearly marked medics. The Red Cross and medics have strongly disputed Israel's claims and stated that Tel al-Sultan had been considered safe at the time and coordination was not required. Israeli forces have killed at least 105 members of the civil defense, 27 PRCS paramedics, 284 UN agency staff, and nearly 1,400 health ministry workers since the war on Gaza began in October 2023. And there the death tolls there has topped over 50,000, including, of course, 15,000 children. So Meta is doing their damnedest to make sure that they're evil motherfuckers. As Meta Prophet says ads promote illegal Israeli settlements in the West Bank. And there's some motherfuckers destined for hell right there. Facebook has platformed more than 100 paid advertisements promoting illegal settlements and far-right settler activity in the occupied West Bank. An Al Jazeera investigation has found, raising concerns that the social media giant is profiting from content that may violate international law. That's why I didn't put this in the propaganda watch. These are like crimes, like real ass, you're breaking international law shit. Among the advertisements identified were also calls for the demolition of Palestinian homes, schools, and playgrounds, as well as fundraising appeals for Israeli military units operating in Gaza. Facebook's parent company, Meta, told Al Jazeera that any advertisements that ran on its platforms were reviewed by the company and approved because they're Zionist-run, while it admitted that some of the advertisements had since been removed for violating our social issues, elections, and politics policies. Wink, 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 wink. It did not specify whether the promotion of illegal settlements built on stolen Palestinian land breached those standards. Yeah, it's like, oh, you criticizing Israel. I got something to say about that. But illegal settlements? Yeah, sure, why not? What's up, Teresa and Denver over there on the Rockfin? Good to see you. Good morning. Happy, joy. Consider if a meteor just came and landed on Israel. I bet the amount of killing of innocent women and kids would go way down. Maybe. Then U.S. troops would come in and they're like, oh, we'll finish the job. Seriously, if you're in the military, if you're active military, you should probably reconsider who you're working for and what you're doing, because you're not defending the United States. That's for fucking sure. Legal experts told Al Jazeera that Meta could be complicit in violations of international law by approving, accepting payment, and publishing these advertisements. Brian Leishman, an MP in the UK Parliament, described the findings as extremely concerning. At least 52 paid advertisements from Israeli real estate companies were found promoting property sales and settlements across the occupied West Bank, targeting buyers from across Israel as well as some users in the UK and the US. These advertisements were first published in March of last year, about a little over a year ago, and many remain active on Facebook. Dun, dun, dun. We have robust processes and teams to review ads, and our ad review system is designed to review ads before they go live, Meta told Al Jazeera. So we know these ads are illegal, but we're putting them up anyway. Thanks for playing our game. This system relies primarily on automated technology to apply our advertising standards to the millions of ads that run across our apps, while relying on our teams to build and train these systems, and in some cases to manually review ads. So they're blaming the robots. It's the robots. Hey, nice, these robots, man. They're fucking want to kill everybody. April 2, Liberation Day tomorrow. Don't forget, get your shopping done early. Among the advertisements identified by Al Jazeera were at least 4 promoting property sales in the illegal Israeli settlement of Ariel, 12 miles east of the Green Line in occupied West Bank. The listings, written in Hebrew and targeting Israeli Facebook users, were paid for by a Facebook page called Ramat Ederet, which describes itself as offering penthouses for a perfect quality of life, built on the dead corpses of Palestinians. According to the website, the Ramat Ederet Hillside Crown Project is 2 neighborhoods north and south with a total of 27 buildings of between 4 to 8 floors. The apartments provide a complete urban living experience in a perfect neighborhood. The company has a valuation of $300 million, according to PitchBook, a research firm and financial data provider. Ramat Ederet did not respond to Al Jazeera's request for comment because they knew they was doing some illegal shit. The real estate company selling apartments and houses in Ariel is Ramat Ederet, which has received financing from the First International Bank of Israel. The Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions Movement, BDS, has long called for a boycott of the bank over its role in financing illegal settlements. Following pressure in January 2014, the Dutch pension fund PGGM withdrew investments from the bank, while insurance giant AXA divested in 2022. Another 48 advertisements were posted by Gabai Real Estate, advertising homes in the occupied West Bank settlement of Ma'ale Mael Abduman and the Efrat settlement. These homes are part of an expansion approved in March last year by Israel's Higher Planning Committee, which is overseen by far-right finance minister Bezalel Smotrich, who since 2023 no longer needs political or military approvals for expansion plans. Yaniv Gabe, the co-owner of Gabai Real Estate, told Al Jazeera, "Unfortunately, we were only able to post 48 ads because our budget is limited. We have to spend most of our budget murdering people. And we advertise on many different platforms. But as we sell more homes to Jews returning home to Judea, our advertising budget will increase and we can post more." Some Israelis refer to the occupied West Bank as Judea and Samaria, and the far-right government has made a push towards annexing the Palestinian territory. The advertisements attempt to portray living in the settlements as idyllic. One lists an 8-bedroom mansion with a huge garden, large sukkah area, which seats over 50 people, above-ground pool, jacuzzi. Oh, I wonder if they'll get that jacuzzi lady to come over and do that. Sauna, cold plunge, and breathtaking desert mountain views. A dream home just 20 minutes from Jerusalem. Don't miss out. We're killing people so you can move in. Carolina Are, a platform governance researcher at the Center for Digital Citizens at Northumbria University, told Al Jazeera that the real estate ads have been expertly framed as standard property listings, allowing them to elude moderation. Well, yeah, they don't mention the dead bodies. Obviously, you don't want to do that. That's a deal killer. Moderators may not be aware of the nuances of international law either. Under international law, all Israeli settlements in the West Bank are illegal. The transfer of an occupying power's civilian population into occupied territory is considered a war crime under the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. Professor Oif O'Donoghue, I don't know how you say that, international law expert from Queen's University, Belfast, said, "On the West Bank, property can be privately bought and sold. However, whether they have the legal title to sell that land at all would be highly questionable. If the Israeli government is facilitating it and they are settlements, then they would be in violation of the Third Geneva Convention. Here, the Israeli government has a duty to prevent illegal settlements." And then we laugh because we know these motherfuckers ain't going to do that. Al Jazeera also identified 50 advertisements posted by Regevim, a far-right settler group founded by Smotrich in 2006 that has called for the destruction of Palestinian homes, schools, and a children's water park. Because, sure, why not? Throw a little cherry on top of the evil there. Let's kill the water park, too. The group receives funding from the Israeli government via the West Bank Settlements Council and also Amana, another pro-settlement organization sanctioned by the UK and US government. AOFE, that's how you say it, Denver? Thank you. One advertisement celebrated the demolition of a Palestinian school, boasting, "Following our petition, the civil administration forces tore down an illegal Palestinian school built in Herodian Nature Reserve. This school is only one out of more than 100 illegal school buildings." A Palestinian school in Palestine that's illegal. Probably because they're teaching the kids that Israel's a bunch of evil motherfuckers. Another advertisement called for a Palestinian water park to be demolished, claiming Palestinians are enjoying themselves at our expense. Oh my God. The fucking... Regevim defended the campaign against the school, saying it was built for the sole purpose of creating confrontation. It was deemed by the Israeli courts to pose how funny, to pose a very serious and imminent danger to the safety and well-being of the Palestinian children who are being bussed in to fill the makeshift structure, Naomi Linder-Khan of Regevim said. Oh, those pools. The European Union has previously condemned the demolition of schools in the West Bank, and Human Rights Watch has described the practice as discriminatory and violates children's rights to education. They call it New Trumpville. Gone! In October last year, nearly 90 U.S. legislators urged then President Joe Biden to impose sanctions on Regevim. Just lip service, though. Regevim denies being a far-right or settler group, instead claiming to be a mainstream professional contributor to public discourse and is a frequent participant in national policy discussion and debate. But Leishman, the British MP, said revelations that Israeli far-right pro-settler groups, as well as businesses and allegedly even active Israeli soldiers, may be using social media to promote what could be seen as illegal under international law are extremely concerning. Beyond settlement expansion, Meta has also performed fundraising advertisements for Israeli military units operating in Gaza, even after a ceasefire was declared. Legal experts say allowing such advertisements may violate international humanitarian law by promoting military operations in occupied territory. 9 advertisements paid for by Israeli singer Meir Malik sought donations for sniper teams, drone units, and special forces battalions deployed in Gaza. One advertisement, still active on Facebook, reads, "We urgently need shooting tripods to complete our mission in Jabalia." And there's some of the shit right there. Other advertisements requested funding for drones for the Yassar battalion and an elite Israeli army unit in Rafah, as well as night vision goggles for the Golani Brigade so they can murder people in their sleep. Malik did not respond to 2 requests for comment. According to Meta's advertising guidelines, ad must not promote the sale or use of weapons, ammunition, or explosives. This includes ads for weapon modification accessories. But if you're Israeli, I look the other way. Professor Nev Gordon of Queen Mary University, UK, said Facebook is making money from criminal activity. Exactly. By allowing third parties to post such ads, Facebook becomes complicit in their criminal activity, since the ads themselves play a role in whitewashing, normalizing, and legitimizing acts that, according to international humanitarian law and the Rome Statute, are egregious crimes. Leishman added, social media giants should be a lot more careful if they are careful. They're owned by Zionists, so they know what they're doing. They should be a lot more careful what they allow to appear on their platform rather than profiteering from organizations with a dangerous and divisive agenda. It's time for them to start taking responsibility so that they are not complicit in systematic violations of international law. I think they know they're complicit. They just don't care. Everyone is under an obligation not to recognize, aid, or assist in maintaining the illegal occupation of Palestinian territory. Social media giants are not exempt or above the law. But aren't they? When the law protects them, they are. Facebook, yeah. So if you're watching this on Facebook and you see these ads, you need to report them. Not that it's going to do any good, but at least recognize that they're there. When you're sending Meemaw pictures of you at the water park, just know that the one in Gaza had to be taken away. So Iran is just like, come on, bitch. Come on. Bring it, motherfuckers. Iran says no talks under pressure. Doom 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 doom. Ready for confrontation. This is an exclusive to Al Mayadeen English. Ooh. This is we'll get to him in a sec. In an exclusive statement for Al Mayadeen, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi affirmed that the window for diplomacy remains open, emphasizing that there is always room for diplomatic efforts, far from threats and pressure, and there's always room for Jell-O, too. However, he stressed the need for diplomacy to be conducted based on equality, asserting that Iran will not engage in direct negotiations with the U.S. under pressure or threats. He further explained that Iran has its own rationale and justifications for engaging in discussions and negotiations, stressing that Tehran will speak when it deems it necessary and that it will not engage in direct talks with Washington. So they send letters back and forth. This comes after Donald Trump threatened Iran with bombing or secondary tariffs, him and those fucking tariffs, if an agreement with the U.S. over Iran's nuclear agreement is not reached. In a telephone interview for NBC News, Trump revealed that U.S. and Iranian officials were talking but did not elaborate or provide further details. Wesley Donaldson, what's up, my man? Good to see you, brother. IRGC Deputy Commander Brigadier General Ali Fadavi, on the other hand, asserted that Iran's response to any aggression will be proportionate and may even exceed what its adversaries attempt, highlighting that IRGC forces are eagerly awaiting a confrontation with the United States. They also said, look, if you try to you threaten us, we might actually do nukes too. The U.S. is incapable of negotiating on those terms. Exactly, Wes. Fadavi, in an exclusive statement, remarked that the U.S. has had presidents more reckless than Trump, citing former President Ronald Reagan as an example. He recalled how Iran responded to American aggression in the Gulf during Reagan's presidency by targeting U.S. warships and helicopters, emphasizing that Iran's military capabilities today are far superior to those of the 1980s. He highlighted the high potential for inflicting damage on U.S. forces at sea, pointing out that 40% of global oil exports pass through the Strait of Hormuz, which remains under Iranian control. Reaffirming Iran's dominance over the strategic waterway, Fadavi stressed that the Strait of Hormuz has always been and will continue to be under Iranian control. He warned that the U.S. would not dare make a misstep, urging nations worldwide to learn from America's recklessness and intervene to prevent further escalation as its consequences extend beyond the U.S. and impact of other countries as well. So Iran's basically saying, you need to come get your boy, all right? Your boy's about to get his ass whooped, all right? Come get him, because if you want him to be okay, you better come get him. Meanwhile, IRGC Aerospace Force Commander Brigadier General Amir Ali Hajidazeh dismissed Trump's threats against Iran, labeling them as closer to a joke. He urged American military leaders to provide more accurate assessments to their government officials, emphasizing that those who live in glass houses should not throw stones. Otherwise, we'll get nukes, and then we'll nuke your glass house. Hajizadeh warned the U.S. administration to act with caution, asserting that Washington will not follow through on its threats, which Iran considers nothing more than a joke. Yeah, they'll murder their officials. I think, what was it? That general, he got murdered in Iraq, I think, but they didn't do it in Iran because they know better. Meanwhile, while my Qatar gently weeps, they're also facing international scrutiny over human rights violations. Say that was a little Beatles reference there for you kids. While my Qatar gently weeps and faces scrutiny over human rights violations. That's their fight. Ooh, look at Qatar. That looks like the city of the future. From labor rights abuses to restrictions on women's rights, freedom of expression, and the right to assembly and protest, Qatar has faced persistent and widespread criticism for years. These concerns have resulted in 317 international human rights recommendations under the UN Universal Periodic Review, which extends until April, which is now April. A review by Anadolu of international reports, particularly from human rights organizations, reveals key concerns regarding Qatar's human rights record, summarized as below. 1. Violations of workers' rights. Amnesty International's 2020 report on 2023 findings stated that hundreds of thousands of migrant workers paid illegal recruitment fees or had wages withheld and have not had redress. They were especially vulnerable to exploitation and workers raising complaints and protesting about their treatment. Qatar has introduced grievance mechanisms, but workers must be in the country to access its labor courts and compensation scheme, it added. Hundreds of security personnel and contract workers protested in Qatar after working excessive hours with no rest days at the 2022 FIFA World Cup venues, demanding full payment of their dues. However, foreign workers remain prohibited from forming or joining labor unions, a right granted only to Qatari citizens. Isn't that how that works? So they get outside labor and then fuck them over. According to Amnesty International, foreign workers continue to face obstacles in seeking redress and compensation for various violations, while Qatari authorities have failed to effectively investigate migrant worker deaths or hold employers and officials accountable. In July of last year, Michael Page, Deputy Director of the Middle East and North Africa Division at Human Rights Watch, warned that a proposal by Qatar's Shura Council to reinstate exit permit requirements for domestic workers puts them at a greater risk of abuse. Page emphasized that the Qatari authorities should reject these recommendations and look to expand and improve on their 2020 reforms, noting that international human rights law provides that everyone has the right to leave any country. Any restrictions can only be on a case-by-case basis for a legitimate reason. The 2025 Human Rights Watch World Report highlighted that foreign workers comprise approximately 91% of Qatar's population and remain subject to the abusive kafala, or sponsorship system, that gives employers disproportionate control over workers. Sounds like somebody else needs to shut it down too. The report added that abusive elements of the kafala system remain intact. Workers still struggle to change jobs easily, as in practice they are required to obtain signed letters from their original employer approving their resignation. Workers are unable to change jobs even when their employers fail to pay them. Freedom of expression. Human rights reports indicate significant restrictions on freedom of expression in Qatar. According to Amnesty International's 2024 report, Qatari authorities, I had a Qatari when I was a kid. No, wait. That was the off-brand Atari. Never mind. Continued to curtail the rights to freedom of expression and peaceful assembly, including by arbitrarily detaining individuals for exercising their human rights. It also documented arrests and repression of individuals protesting Qatar's electoral law, which discriminates against the Al-Mari tribe. A 2020 Amnesty International report titled "Repressive New Law Further Curbs Freedom of Expression" condemned a new vaguely worded law, those vaguely worded laws, which criminalizes a broad range of speech and publishing activity, stands to significantly restrict freedom of expression in Qatar, barely 2 years after it acceded to the ICCPR, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. The report said that the new law contradicts its 2018 commitment to international human rights treaties. This law effectively signals a worrying regression from commitments made 2 years ago to guarantee the right to freedom of expression. Lynn Malouf, then the Middle East Research Director at Amnesty International, said, Qatar already has a host of repressive laws, but this new legislation deals another bitter blow to freedom of expression in the country and is a blatant breach of international human rights law. She called on Qatari authorities to repeal such laws in line with their international legal obligations, not adding more of them. In August 2021, Qatari authorities were accused of suppressing protests by members of the Al-Mura tribe against an arbitrary law that barred them from running in Shura Council elections. Tribe members shared their grievances on the tweeters. The Qatari Ministry of Interior later announced on those same tweeters that 7 individuals had been referred to the public prosecution for allegedly using social media to spread false news and incite racist and tribal tensions. The right to vote. Number 3. Following these protests, Qatar's Shura Council reverted to an entirely appointed system after holding a single election cycle from 2021 to 2024. In late 2024, the council voted to amend the constitution, eliminating elections for 2/3 of its members in favor of government appointments. The amendments were approved in a public referendum with 90.4% voting in favor. How about that? So the appointments voted it in. How nice. Women's rights. According to Amnesty International's 2023 report, women continue to face discrimination in law and practice. Under the guardianship system, women need the permission of a male guardian, usually their husband, father, brother, or grandfather, or uncle, to marry, study abroad on government scholarships, work in many government jobs, travel abroad if aged under 25, and access reproductive health care. How nice. The 2025 Human Rights Watch World Report confirmed these findings, stating that women in Qatar face mobility restrictions, preventing them from moving freely in their own country and traveling outside Qatar without the permission of their male guardians. For example, female students in Qatar are required to show that they have male guardian permission before they can go on field trips or stay at or leave campus accommodations or grounds. And 5 allegations of physical violations. On March 24th of this year, Australian women resumed a lawsuit against Qatar Airways alleging physical violations nearly 4 years after an October 2020 incident. Then authorities discovered a newborn baby abandoned in a trash bin at Hamad International Airport, prompting a police investigation to identify the mother. Several Australian women later sued Qatar Airways in 2022, claiming they were subjected to humiliating strip searches in an attempt to determine if they had recently given birth when they were on a flight from Doha to Sydney, according to Western media reports then. You just use your imagination there if you want. The women sought compensation for unlawful physical contact, arbitrary detention, and assault, claiming that Qatar's Civil Aviation Authority has a duty of care to prevent them from being harmed while at Doha Airport. In April last year, an Australian federal court dismissed the case, but the women filed an appeal. In a recent hearing, the court informed the plaintiffs that their case could qualify for compensation under the 1999 Montreal Convention, which governs airline liability worldwide. Under this treaty ratified by both Australia and Qatar, passengers can seek compensation in courts at their flight's destination or in their country of residence. The Badoon and climate issues. The 2025 Human Rights Watch World Report addressed the Badoon, that's stateless people, crisis in Qatar, stating that Qatar's decision to arbitrarily strip families from the Gufran clan of their citizenship since 1996 has left some members stateless and deprived them of basic human rights like the right to work, access to health care, education, marriage, and starting a family, owning property, and freedom of movement. The report also said that Qatar is the 14th largest oil producer worldwide, has the 3rd largest natural gas reserves globally, and is among the highest greenhouse gas emissions per capita globally. Migrant workers continue to be exposed to extreme heat risks despite the introduction of new protections against heat stress, including the bulb globe temperature. The WBGT exceeds 32.1 degrees Celsius. That's close to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. The report warned that Qatar's failure to protect workers from heat-related illnesses, including organ failure, shifts the care burden to overstretch healthcare systems of migrant origin countries. 317 international recommendations for Qatar between February 24th and April 4th of this year. Qatar underwent, the end of the future? Qatar, I guess, is undergoing its universal periodic review at the UN Human Rights Council, unless that was last year. On March 27th, Qatar's Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated that Qatar received 317 human rights recommendations, accepting 245 and acknowledging 72. How nice of them. Jawari bint Abdulaziz Al Sawaidi, acting permanent representative of Qatar to the UN in Geneva, reaffirmed Qatar's commitment to implementing the accepted recommendations in an objective and transparent manner, striving to enhance and protect human rights in line with the highest international standards, until people stop watching, and then they'll just keep doing the same shit over again, just like everybody else. Among the recommendations included in the UN report was a call for Qatar to ratify the optional protocol to the Convention Against Torture and other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment as requested by Denmark and Switzerland. The report also recommended ratification of the International Convention on the Protection of the Rights of All Migrant Workers and Members of Their Families, a measure proposed by Ecuador and the Philippines, with the latter urging Qatar to reconsider its position on joining the treaty. Additionally, the recommendations included ratification of the International Convention for the protection of all persons from enforced disappearance, submitted by France and Thailand. The report further urged Qatar to accede to the Rome Statute of the ICC and to ratify the International Labor Organization, the ILO, Convention on Decent Work. Other recommendations called for ensuring freedom of expression and association, facilitating the work of civil society organizations and human rights defenders, and allowing journalists, activists, and organizations to operate freely without fear of retaliation. Qatar has undergone 3 previous universal periodic reviews of its human rights record, conducted in February 2010, May 2014, and May 2019. And yes, so if you're skipping ahead, the TLDR is Qatar is basically a piece of shit. Thank you. So if you're watching this later and you're like, Jesus Christ, this story's long, just Qatar is a piece of shit. You didn't miss anything. Speaking of deporting people like Orange Man likes to do, Pakistan's getting in on the fun. Pakistan plans to expel 3 million Afghans from the country this year. Why? We'll see. Pakistan plans to expel 3 million Afghans from the country this year as the deadline for them to voluntarily leave the capital and surrounding areas expired yesterday. It's the latest phase of a nationwide crackdown launched in October 2023 to expel foreigners living in Pakistan illegally, mostly Afghans. The sweaters and blankets can stay. The campaign has drawn fire from rights groups, the Taliban government, and the UN. Arrests and deportations were due to begin today, but were pushed back to April 10th because of the Eid al-Fitr holidays marking the end of Ramadan, according to government documents seen by the AP. About 845,000 Afghans have left Pakistan over the past 18 months, figures from the International Organization for Migration show. Pakistan says 3 million Afghans remain. Of these, 1,344,584 hold proof of registration cards, while 807,402 have Afghan citizen cards. There are a further 1 million Afghans who are in the country illegally because they have no paperwork. Pakistan said it will make sure that Afghans do not return once deported. Authorities wanted Afghan citizen card holders to leave the capital Islamabad and Rawalpindi city by March 31st and return to Afghanistan voluntarily or be deported. So yeah, they want them to self-deport, I guess. Those with proof of registration can stay in Pakistan until June 30th, while Afghans bound for third country resettlement must also leave Islamabad and Rawalpindi by March 31st. Which was day before yesterday, well, yesterday actually. Authorities have said they will work with foreign diplomatic missions to resettle Afghans, failing which they will also be deported from Pakistan. Tens of thousands of Afghans fled after the Taliban takeover in 2021. They were approved for resettlement in the U.S. through a program that helps people at risk because their work with the American government, media, aid agencies, and rights groups. However, old shithead paused U.S. refugee programs in January, and 20,000 Afghans are now in limbo. No Afghan officials to be made part of any committee or formal decision-making process, one of the documents said about the expulsion plans. A spokesman for Afghanistan's refugee ministry, Abdul Muttalib Haqqani, told the AP that Pakistan was taking decisions arbitrarily without involving the UN Refugee Agency or the Taliban government. We have shared our problems with them, stating that unilaterally expelling refugees is neither in their interest nor ours, said Haqqani. It is not in their interest because expelling them in this way raises hatred against Pakistan. And who knows, you just need more hatred in the world, don't you? For us, it's natural that managing so many Afghans coming back is a challenge. We've requested that they should be deported through a mechanism and mutual understanding so they can return with dignity. 2 transit stations will be set up in the northwest province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa to help with deportations. One will be in Nasir Bagh an area in the Peshawar suburbs. The second will be in the border town of Landi Kotal, some 7 kilometers from the Torkham crossing. It's not clear what will happen to children born in Pakistan to Afghan parents, Afghan couples with different document types, and families where one parent is a Pakistani citizen and the other is Afghan. But officials indicated to the AP that social welfare staff will be on hand to help with such cases. Omaid Khan has an Afghan citizen card while his wife has proof of registration. According to Pakistani government policy, he has to leave, but his wife can stay until June 30th. Their 2 children have no documents, including passports or identity cards from either country. I'm from Paktia province, but I have never been there, and I am not sure about my future, he said. Nazir Ahmed was born in the southwest Pakistani of Quetta and has never been to Afghanistan. His only connection to the country was through his father, who died in Quetta 4 years ago. How can we go there, said Ahmed, who's 21. Few people know us. All our relatives live in Quetta. What will we do if we go there? We appeal to the Pakistani government to give us some time so we can go and find out, at least get some employment. So, yeah, and you have people here that are getting deported to God knows where. The craziness isn't just here. It's all around the world. Speaking of crazy, actually, I don't know if that's a good segue or not. But that coffee's crazy good. The far right was dealt a blow in France. Not the kind they pay for. Frances Le Pen sentenced to 4 years in jail. There she is right there, wearing a blue jean jacket that she got at the local thrift store, followed by some character actors from the show Crime Story. Those are references if you don't get, sorry, Google them. A Paris court has sentenced French right-wing politician Marine Le Pen to a 4-year jail term, half of which is without parole, in a case involving the embezzlement of EU funds for her National Rally Party. Le Pen has also been barred from running for president in 2027. How convenient. The verdict yesterday is the culmination of an extended case in which RN and several of its senior figures were accused of diverting money meant for the offices of European Parliament members towards the National Party structure. Le Pen and 8 MEPs were found guilty of running the scheme between 2004 and 2016. The 5-year ban on participating in elections, which was requested by the prosecution, comes into effect immediately, regardless of any appeal process. The top French Constitutional Court ruled last week in an unrelated case that such a punishment was legal under the Basic Law. There's that blue jean. I know that's not blue jean, but it looks like a blue jean jacket. The court has reportedly allowed Le Pen to serve half of her jail time under home arrest, monitored by an ankle bracelet. Oh, that's nice. Others found guilty in the case on Monday were sentenced to serve time in prison, no home arrest for them, with punishments between 12 months and 3 years. RN President Jordan Bardella denounced the sentence on his Twitter account, calling it unjust and amounting to an execution of French democracy. And you don't want to mention executions too much, especially like the guillotines. They have a little history of that. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has expressed support for Le Pen, posting "I am Marine" in French and tagging her account on the tweeters. Well, kind of like when JFK said "Ich bin ein Berliner" when he said he was a cheese Danish. Le Pen stepped down from the RN party leadership in favor of Bardella in 2022, but remains the head of its faction in the National Assembly. Described as far-right by her detractors, she has accused the EU of mishandling illegal immigration and has criticized its support for Ukraine in the conflict with Russia, among other policies. As part of the court's decision, RN was sentenced to seizure of already confiscated funds and a fine totaling 2 million euros or 2.2 American smackaroonies. Meanwhile, in Nepal, at least 2 dead in Nepal after pro-monarchy supporters clash with police during a rally there. Kathmandu. I think I'm going to Kathmandu. That's where I'm going to. Remember that song? What was his name? You know what I'm talking about. Bob Seger. Anyway, I'm gonna make these references whether you get them or not. The television cameraman was among two people who died on Friday when supporters of Nepal's former king clashed with police during a rally in the capital to demand restoration of the Himalayan nationals' abolished monarchy. Several protesters and police officers were injured in the clashes, the Home Ministry said. An injured protester died while getting treatment at a hospital, while a local TV station said one of its staff was killed when a building he was filming from was set on fire. Yeah, there was a reporter in there and was streaming from inside there, and they set the building on fire. They tried to get the police to help get him out, but they were like, your boy's literal toast. Several protesters and police officers were injured in the clashes, the Home Ministry said. An injured protester died while getting treatment at the hospital. And it was a film. Okay, we already did that. The government imposed a curfew in the areas where the clashes happened in Kathmandu after the police in riot gear used tear gas, batons, and water cannon against the protesters. Thousands of supporters of former King Gyanendra Shah. Wait a minute, that's not Khan. Had gathered at the eastern edge of Kathmandu for the rally organized by an alliance of groups supporting the ex-monarch. The gathering near the airport had been planned as a peaceful rally, but trouble began when some protesters in a white pickup truck, agents provocateur, drove at a police barricade, colliding with several officers. Police responded by shooting tear gas shells and spraying the crowd with water cannon. Instead of just dealing with the dude in the truck, they said, fuck it, everybody gets a piece. Is that all there is to it? Oh, there we go. On the other side of the Capitol, thousands of people who support the present Republican system of government gathered Friday for a counter rally. The rally participants were from the opposition parties led by the Maoists, a group that fought an armed rebellion from 1996 to 2006 to oust the monarchy. It's impossible for the monarchy to come back. It's ridiculous to even think that something that is already dead and cremated could come back to life, said Ram Kumar Shrestha, a Maoist supporter. I don't know, man. If you've seen Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you probably know that you can bring shit back to life, even if it's dust. There have been growing demand in recent months for Shah to be reinstated as king and Hinduism to be brought back as a state religion, because you need a state religion, right? That's not going to control people or anything. Royalist groups accused the country's major political parties of corruption and failed governance and say people are frustrated with politicians. That seems to be a common theme around the world. We need the country to return to monarchy and the king to come back. Thank you very much. Not that king, because the political parties and systems have failed in the country, said Rajendra Bahadur Kati, one of the participants at the pro-monarchy rally. When the source is so polluted, the entire system has gotten rotten. Massive street protests in 2006 forced Gyanendra to give up his authoritarian rule, and 2 years later, the parliament voted to abolish the monarchy. Gyanendra, who left the royal palace to live as commoner, has not commented on the calls for the return of monarchy. Despite growing support, the former king has little chance of immediately returning to power. His wife Priscilla said, "He dead, y'all." Oh, you do? The Maoist rebels are the terrorists, and you know people in the region, specifically in Kathmandu. That's crazy. Yeah, there is no hell. There's only France. An Australian politician was petitioned to prove her loyalty to Israel. She said, F this and shit, and self-deported back to Afghanistan. Fuck this shit. And she said, fuck this shit. Yeah, I would say fuck this shit too. Peace, chicken grease. I'm out, motherfuckers. I'm not, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. If you want to know more details about the proxy war in Ukraine, Kyle Anzalone over there at the Libertarian Institute has us covered here as the New York Times investigation reveals new details in that ongoing war. It discloses the extent of the U.S. support for the proxy war in Ukraine. One European official said Washington is part of the kill chain now. But a New York Times investigation reveals that America has woven into the war far more intimately and broadly than previously understood, writes Adam Entwas, who says he conducted more than 300 interviews for the story. At critical moments, the partnership was the backbone of Ukrainian military operations. The article reports that U.S. and Ukraine's military leaders convened in Germany to design a plan to defeat the Russian invasion. Early in the war, Washington helped to locate the position of Russian generals and targets on the Crimean Peninsula for Kiev to strike. Every morning, officers recalled the Ukrainians and Americans gathered to survey Russian weapons, systems, and ground forces and determine the ripest, highest value targets, the Times article continues. The priority lists were then handed over to the Intelligence Fusion Center, where officers analyzed streams of data to pinpoint the target's locations. When the Ukrainians questioned the U.S. intelligence, an American general was said to have explained, "Don't worry about how we found out. Just trust that when you shoot, it will hit it, and you'll like the results. And if you don't like the results, tell us. We'll make it better." According to Entwas, the relationship between the U.S. and Ukrainian militaries strained over differences in strategy, writing that the Ukrainians aimed to win the war outright, even as they shared that hope. The Americans wanted to make sure the Ukrainians didn't lose it. In some cases, Ukrainian successes in the war, such as the sinking of the flagship of Russia's Black Sea Fleet, caused anger and panic in the White House. A second example is the 2024 Ukrainian invasion of Russia's Kursk region. The Ukrainian general that ordered the attack exploited a CIA personnel change in Kiev to conduct the offensive without Washington's knowledge. In the lead-up to Ukraine's 2023 counteroffensive, Kiev broke from the plan designed by U.S. military leaders. The decision led one American official to tell the Times, "We should have walked away." The counteroffensive failed to meet its objectives. The reporting matches a remark from Eric Green, who was on President Sleepy Joe's National Security Council at the time of the invasion. In January, he told Time magazine that the White House never gave any promises to help Ukraine take back the land Russian forces had captured. That was not going to be a success story ultimately, he said. The more important objective was for Ukraine to survive as a sovereign democratic country free to pursue integration with the West, which was never going to happen because Russia did not want them to join NATO and have NATO right on their fucking doorstep. Right? According to Entwas, the relationship between then top General Mark Milley and his Ukrainian counterpart, General Valery Zaluzhny, became so fraught that the Pentagon worked up an elaborate telephone tree that included entrepreneur Igor Pasternak, who would use his contacts in Ukraine to beg Zaluzhny to return Milley's calls. While Washington struggled for influence in Kiev, London had more sway. In one case, an American general went to the UK defense minister to force Ukraine to dismiss Major General Andriy Kovalchuk, who did not conduct the operations recommended by the U.S. military leadership. New York Times investigation also found that as Washington escalated support for Kiev, including allowing the CIA to coordinate strikes on Russian positions near the front lines, the CIA was additionally authorized to help Ukraine use a maritime drone developed for Taiwan against the Russian Black Sea Fleet. However, the White House was concerned about pushing the Kremlin to turn to its nuclear arsenal. At one point in the war, U.S. intelligence agencies believed there was a 50% chance Russia would use a tactical nuclear weapon. Right? That's what they wanted them to do so they could say, "See? Nukes!" As Ukraine became more desperate, the war plans became bolder. In 2024, the U.S. provided Ukraine with arms for a military operation intended to drive Russia from the Crimean Peninsula, while the CIA also helped to plan an operation to destroy the Kerch Bridge connecting Crimea to the Russian mainland. They also did the Nord Stream, too. It was all CIA. And twas compared the war in Ukraine to those fought in Vietnam and the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, arguing that it could give the West a future conflict with Russia. That was not going to be a success story ultimately. The more important objective was for Ukraine to survive as a sovereign democratic country, free to pursue integration with the rest, basically be a puppet for the West. Interesting information there. Of course, you knew the CIA was all up in that shit. Beam me up, Scotty. There's no intelligent life here. He never said, nobody ever said beam me up, Scotty. He said, Scotty, beam me up, or beam me up, but he never said beam me up, Scotty. That's one of those, what is it? What's his name? I don't know. It's a time slip. One of those things. Finally, in our news block here, Russia launches a nuclear sub with missiles impossible to intercept. The Mandela effect. That's what I was thinking of. Russia has launched its first nuclear submarine armed with the Zircon hypersonic cruise missile. That's what the ladies call my penis. They don't. Not at all. The Perm, which is not the Mr. Brady haircut from the 70s, is the sixth vessel in the Yasin-class Project 885-885M family and is expected to be commissioned into the Russian Navy's Pacific Fleet next year. I congratulate you, all the naval sailors and shipbuilders of Russia, on this great milestone event, Russian President Vladimir Putin said at the launch. Today in Severodvinsk at the legendary Sevmash, a new multi-purpose nuclear submarine Perm is being launched. We continue serial production of modern submarine missile carriers, and this is already fifth nuclear submarine of the Yasin M project. Next year, it should join Navy and begin performing combat missions. The Perm, or, the man bun. Unlike previous Russian nuclear attack submarines, Yasin and Yasin M vessels are multi-role platforms capable of striking both naval and land-based targets with vertically launched cruise missiles in addition to their traditional hunter-killer role. The Yasin class is intended to replace Russia's Akula and Oscar-class submarines with 5 vessels already in service. The lead vessel was built to the original Yasin specifications, while subsequent submarines were constructed under the modernized Yasin M design. The Perm is the first Yasin-class submarine to be equipped. Here we go. This is the burying the lead. The Perm is the first Yasin-class submarine to be equipped with hypersonic missiles that go so fucking fast that you can't even stop them. No additional specifications have been disclosed, but its predecessor, the Arkhangelsk, a length of 426 feet, giggity, and a hold'em diameter of 42.6 feet. The Zircon has a reported range of 500 to 1,000 kilometers, depending on its trajectory. It can fly at Mach 8 or almost 6,138 miles per hour, which is fucking fast, making it nearly impossible to intercept with current air defense systems, according to the U.S.-based Missile Defense Advocacy Alliance, the MDAA. If that information is accurate, the Zircon missile would be the fastest in the world, making it nearly impossible to defend against due to its speed alone, CNN wrote, citing the alliance. Additionally, during flight, the missile is enveloped by a plasma cloud, holy shit, that absorbs radio waves, making it invisible to radar, according to the MDAA. That's some Star Trek shit right there. Although not officially acknowledged by Russia, the missile's combat use in Ukraine was claimed by a Ukrainian government-owned forensic research institute in February last year. According to the Kiev Scientific Research Institute of Forensic Expertise, or KISRIF, debris recovered from a February 7th attack on Kiev suggests the use of a Zircon missile. Super fast, motherfuckers. Y'all ain't get, it's me, it's Ernest T. You ain't gonna catch me. Yes, Khan, a Star Trek baddie. Yeah, so we have a huge propaganda watch for you this morning, this afternoon, whatever it is. It's afternoon now. It's high noon. You know, you like to wake up in the morning, maybe have a nice cup of coffee, you know, maybe some breakfast, you know, some music to start your day. Well, some students are waking up to an email asking them to self-deport. Good morning.
The sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these things they are true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
So hundreds of international students wake up to an email asking them to self-deport for campus activism. Hundreds of international students in the U.S. are getting an email from the U.S. Department of State, that's Aquaman's division there, asking them to self-deport owing to campus activism. Immigration attorneys contacted by TOI, I guess that's this thing here, today's paper, affirmed this development, added a few Indian students may also be at the receiving end of such emails for something as innocuous as sharing a social media post. It's not just international students who physically participated in campus activism, but also those who shared or liked anti-national posts that are the target of these emails, said an immigration attorney. This crackdown is based on social media reviews being conducted by the Department of State, which includes consulate officials. Thus, even new student applications, be it for an F, academic study visa, M, vocational study visa, or J, exchange visa, will also come under such social media scrutiny. What the hell? Ain't nobody asked you for nothing. You better get the fuck out of there. Will also come under scrutiny. Applicants will be denied the opportunity to study in the United States. Well, maybe that's a blessing for them since we got a bunch of dumbasses over here. Yeah, that's government deficiency. Get them to self-deport. According to the latest Open Doors report, there are 1.1 million international students studying in the U.S. in 2023 to 24, of which 3.31 are Indian students. I don't know what that means. As reported by Axios earlier, Marco Rubio, Captain Thirsty himself, has launched an AI-fueled catch and revoke effort, we told you about that, to cancel the visas of foreign nationals who appear to support Hamas or other designated terror groups. Axios further reports that more than 300 foreign students have had their student visas revoked in the 3 weeks the catch and revoke has been in operation. There are 1.5 million student visa holders nationwide. The email sent to the students reads, on behalf of the U.S. Department of State, the Bureau of Consular Affairs Visa Office hereby informs you that additional information became available after your visa was issued. As a result, your F1 visa with expiration date, whatever the fuck it is, was revoked in accordance with Section 221I of the U.S. Immigration and Nationality Act as amended. The Bureau of Consular Affairs Visa Office has alerted the Department of Homeland Security's Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, baby, which manages the Student Exchange Visitor Program and is responsible for removal proceedings. They may notify your designated school official about the revocation of your F1 visa by busting down your door in the middle of the night and wearing masks and putting you in an unmarked van and heading for El Salvador. Remaining in the U.S. without a lawful immigration status can result in fines, detention, and or deportation. They might as well just said, we're gonna come get you. It may also make you ineligible for a future U.S. visa. Please note that deportation can take place at a time that does not allow the person being deported to secure possessions or conclude affairs in the United States, hence the middle of the night. Persons being deported may be sent to countries other than their countries of origin, El Salvador. Given the gravity of the situation, individuals whose visa was revoked may wish to demonstrate their intent to depart the U.S. using the CBP Home app. As soon as you depart the U.S., you must personally present your passport to the U.S. Embassy or consulate which issued your visa so your visa can be physically canceled. You must not attempt to use your visa as it has been revoked. If you intend to travel to the U.S. in the future, you must apply for another U.S. visa, and a determination of your eligibility for a visa will be made at the time. According to immigration attorneys, a flurry of self-deportation emails are being sent to international students. The flurry stems from a March 25th internal directive dispatched by Rubio, directing mandatory social media reviews of existing international students already in the U.S. and new applications. Hey, CBC voter, good to see you. Yeah, that's some Gestapo shit right there. What are you putting on the social media? 9! It's a social media review uncovers potentially derogatory information indicating that the applicant may not be eligible for a visa. Fraud prevention units are required to take screenshots of social media findings to the extent it is relevant to a visa ineligibility to preserve the record against the applicant's later alteration of the information, states the internal directive. Consular officers do not need to upload social media findings if the review does not reveal derogatory information, but consular officers must enter case notes stating they conducted a social media review which did not reveal derogatory information. This is some 1984 shit. Such students are also being informed by their International Student Service Office that their SEVIS record has been terminated. SEVIS is the web-based information system that the U.S. Department of Homeland Security uses to track and monitor international students during their duration of study. It's nice to know you come to America and you're being tracked. But don't worry, Americans are being tracked too. Thanks, Obama. Students with a terminated SEVIS record must depart the U.S. immediately. There is no grace period following a SEVIS termination. We advise you to depart the U.S. as soon as possible, states this intimation. And there's some views from somebody else. At a press conference in Guyana yet last week, in response to a question relating to the Turkish student at Tufts who has been detained, Rubio said, "If you apply for a visa to enter the United States and be a student and you tell us the reason why you're coming to the U.S. is not just because you want to write op-eds, but because you want to participate in movements that are involved in doing things like vandalizing universities, harassing students, taking over buildings, creating a ruckus." Oh, that's funny. See, AOC? That's how that's how you do a ruckus. Apparently, according to Waterboy there. We're not going to give you a visa. If you lie to us and get a visa and then enter the U.S. and with that visa participate in that sort of activity, we're going to take away your visa. Now, once you've lost your visa, you're no longer illegally in the United States. And we have a right, like every country in the world has a right to remove you from our country. So it's just that simple. Then he goes on and says some other dumb shit. But yeah, so nice to see that you wake up in the morning, you check your emails, and you go, oh, thank you? Question mark. So kids at Columbia University are pretty much fed up with all this bullshit that's going on. It's It's not the time to be afraid anymore. Columbia students fight back against deportation threats. Here we go. Hundreds of Columbia students gathered frantically on March 25th last week in a cathedral near campus for an emergency union meeting debating how to respond against what they described as the university administration's concessions to fascism. The uproar ignited on March 9th when ICE agents detained Mahmoud Khalil. Just came in the middle of the night and got him. A Palestinian graduate and student activist at his home without a judicial warrant. Federal authorities claim to revoke Khalil's green card from his involvement in pro-Palestine campus protests since Israel's war on Gaza. Columbia has yet to issue a public statement addressing the arrest in a university-owned residential building or clarify whether it had prior knowledge, fueling speculation among students about the university's collaboration with law enforcement. Well, it ain't got to be speculation. That's some straight-up truth there, kids. From the back of the cathedral, a student's voice cut through the noise. We're confused about what has happened, but it's clear that the administration has made certain decisions without our consultation. Returning from spring break, a student described the campus as unrecognizable. We need to know we will still have the same academic freedom we had 2 weeks ago. The space swelled with a mix of fear, anger, and grief, not just for Khalil, now held in a Louisiana detention center as his lawyers race against time to prevent his deportation before his wife gives birth next month, but for others caught in the widening crackdown. Since February, ICE and NYPD officers have ramped up their presence on campus, aggressively targeting students with visas or green cards over their pro-Palestine activism. Indian PhD student Rajani Srinivasan was forced to flee the country on March 11th, while Yoon Seo Chung, a South Korean undergraduate, sued the Trump administration this week after its attempts to deport her. It's absolutely devastating to realize that this institution that you once thought was so hallowed is now the perpetrator of violence against their own students who are coming to this country and this school for better opportunities, Ali Wong, a PhD student, said in an interview. Fun fact, Stephen Colbert is a graduate of Columbia School of Broadcasting. So, two and two together. Wong is a member of the Columbia Student Workers Union, UAW Local 2710, one of the largest student worker unions in the country with over 3,000 members. Khalil was a member before graduating in December. The union's International Students Working Group advocates for international students' rights, addressing issues such as housing, communication, travel, student status, and visas. Following Khalil's detention, the group saw a surge in engagement with U.S. citizens joining in support and international students reaching out over safety concerns. As an American, I feel obligation to serve as either a literal or a figurative shield for my international brothers and sisters, Wong said. They've come for the American dream, but are instead becoming casualties in a political war that they have nothing to do with. The union is also pushing for Columbia to commit to being a sanctuary campus as part of its contract negotiations. However, on the eve of bargaining for the next contract, the university expelled UAW Local 2710 President Grant Minor for his participation in the occupation of Hamilton Hall last spring. The following day, Columbia canceled the bargaining session amid backlash. We still on YouTube? That's weird. We got a little thing there. So Minor was among 22 students suspended, expelled, or stripped. Hello, where are you going? Expelled or stripped of their degrees on March 13th for their involvement in the Hamilton Hall occupation. Several other students at Columbia and Barnard have also faced suspension or expulsion for pro-Palestine protests through the semester. Columbia's crackdown on pro-Palestine activism comes as the Trump administration announces $400 million cuts, which we will get to right now. Trump administration to review billions in Harvard funding over anti-Semitism. Looks like we're getting some. You guys seeing the? Is it like buffering on your end? I hope not. Okay. Seems like it's working now. Sorry about that, kids. Trump's gang of idiots announced yesterday a review of nearly $9 billion in multi-year grant commitments to Harvard University as part of an investigation over, quote, anti-Semitism. The review is being launched by the Department of Education, the Department of Health and Human Services, and the U.S. General Services Administration, the latest effort of a federal task force to protect students on college campuses. Yeah, it seems to be okay now. I was getting some weird looks over here. The asshole said it would review more than $255.6 million in current contracts and $8.7 billion in grants spread over multiple years. The statement said the review is to ensure that the university is in compliance with federal regulations, including its civil rights responsibilities. Harvard, confronted with an unprecedented threat to its operations, may be forced to decide how much it's willing to concede in order to preserve its federal funding. Harvard has served as a symbol of the American dream for generations. The pinnacle aspiration for students all over the world to work hard and earn admission to the storied institution, Secretary of Education Linda McMahon said while hanging out at a Chuck E. Cheese. Harvard's failure to protect students on campus from anti-Semitic discrimination, all while promoting divisive ideologies over free inquiry, has put its reputation in serious jeopardy, the secretary said. Harvard can right these wrongs and restore itself to a campus dedicated to an academic excellence and truth-seeking where all students feel safe on its campus, or where they can just keep lying and telling you bullshit. Hang on one second. All right. Sorry about that. Under the review, the Trump administration will look at individual contracts to determine whether stop work orders should be issued. The university will also be expected to provide the White House with a list of federal contracts not included in the initial review. This task force review comes after the agencies notified Harvard in late February that their federal contracts and grants were under review in light of ongoing anti-Semitism investigations. The Trump administration has been cracking down on students and universities over pro-Palestinian demonstrations. As we told you, they pulled more than $400 million in federal funding from Columbia, demanding in exchange that Columbia changes disciplinary policies. So basically saying, you want this money, you better crack heads on these pro-Palestinian people. A federal task force notified 10 universities that it would conduct a comprehensive review of their federal contracts and grants as part of its ongoing investigations under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. The Federal Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism, or the FTIFCA, was set up in February following Trump's executive order. Additional measures to combat anti-Semitism signed at the end of January. In the wake of the political backlash, universities like NYU and Harvard have scrambled to adopt the controversial IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which basically means if you call out Zionists for the piece of shits that they are, then you're basically calling all Jews bad, and you're a bad person. Trump ordered a pause on federal grants and loans, which has since been blocked by a judge. The AP reported in January that the Trump directive has universities nationwide scrambling to determine how a funding freeze could affect their research programs, students, and faculties. And if you were a decent university, you would already had alternative funding set up just so the government wouldn't strangle you. But like I said, a lot of these universities are run by Zionists anyway, so it's kind of a moot point. Meanwhile, Rutgers Senate proposes Big Ten Mutual Defense Compact to protect campus speech. A resolution passed by Rutgers University Senate in response to the Trump administration's crackdown on First Amendment rights is exactly the kind of model needed in higher education, said one professor on Sunday as word spread of the document, which was approved amid outcry over other universities' capitulation to the White House attacks. The public is crying out for leadership from somewhere, said Michael Yarbrough, a professor of law and society at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. Higher ed can provide that and catalyze something bigger, and in the process, we can remind everyone of our true values, something we desperately need to do. The step toward leadership came in the form of a resolution to form a mutual defense compact with the other schools that, along with Rutgers, make up the Big Ten Academic Alliance. Under the compact, the schools would commit meaningful funding to a shared or distributed defense fund, mutual aid as it's called, that would provide immediate and strategic support to any member institution under direct or political legal infringement. The Rutgers Senate, which includes faculty, students, staff, and alumni, called on the New Jersey institution's president to take a leading role in convening a summit of Big Ten academic and legal leadership to initiate the implementation of this compact. The resolution passed on March 28th was agreed to days after the Rutgers faculty union filed a federal lawsuit against the Trump administration to block its efforts to abduct, detain, and deport international students for expressing support for Palestinian rights, criticism of Israel's U.S.-backed assault on Gaza and the West Bank, and taking part in pro-Palestinian campus protests over the past year. Under Trump's executive orders to stop what it classifies as anti-Semitism and to deport foreign nationals who espouse hateful ideology, telling the truth, immigration agents in recent weeks have detained people, including Mahmoud Khalil, as we told you, Tufts University PhD candidate Rumeysa Ozturk, who co-wrote an op-ed calling for her school's divestment, and Georgetown University academic Badar Khan Suri. Khan Suri! Who was detained because the government suspects that he and his wife oppose U.S. foreign policy towards Israel, according to his lawyers. The First Amendment means the government can't arrest, detain, or deport people for lawful political expression. It's as simple as that, said Jamil Jaffer, executive director at the Knight First Amendment Institute, which is representing the Rutgers Union and other faculty organizations in the lawsuit. Yeah, technically you can't, but if there are loopholes and ways of getting around that, that's what's going to happen. This practice is one we'd ordinarily associate with the most repressive political regimes, and it should have no place in our democracy. Under the Rutgers resolution, members of the Senate called on participating institutions to make available, at the request of the institution under direct political infringement, the services of their legal counsel, governance experts, public affairs offices, to coordinate a unified and vigorous response. The response could include legal representation, countersuit actions, amicus briefs. I wear amicus briefs. I used to wear boxers, but now I wear amicus briefs because they're a little more comfortable and you get a little more room in the package area. Legislative advocacy and coalition building, according to the resolution. The Rutgers Senate did not respond to a request for comment on the resolution. Proud to be a Rutgers faculty member today, said Michael Roscher, a professor of Jewish studies at Rutgers University, New Brunswick, regarding the passage of the resolution, which reportedly still has to be approved by Rutgers administrators. Ebony Elizabeth Thomas, chair of the Joint Program in English and Education at University of Michigan, another member of the Big Ten Alliance, expressed support for the Rutgers faculty's leadership. I greatly admired our Rutgers colleagues' actions of solidarity during the recent waves of campus strikes, said Thomas. My admiration has increased tenfold. Last May, about 100 Rutgers faculty members prepared to form a protective circle around students' Palestinian solidarity encampment at the school's New Brunswick campus as a deadline set by administrators approached and officials threatened the students with arrest. Chuck E. Cheese bought out Billy Bob's. I never heard of Billy Bob's. In contrast, Columbia administrators have faced harsh rebukes from the First Amendment rights advocates for agreeing to the Trump administration's demands when the White House said it was canceling $400 million in government grants and contracts over the school's alleged continued inaction in the face of persistent harassment of Jewish students. In response, Columbia, which allowed NYPD to drag students out of a school building and arrest more than 100 people last year, suspended, expelled, and revoked the degrees of some students who had participated in the demonstrations and increased law enforcement presence on campus, among other steps. Good old NYU and Columbia. Bunch of fucking fascists. We've all been trying to figure out how to solve this collective action problem, said Elizabeth Wrigley Field. Wrigley Field? That's not a name. She made that up. I'm going to start calling myself Uncle Warren Superdome. A professor at the University of Minnesota, another member of the Big Ten Alliance. This seems like a very positive big step in the right direction. Can you imagine being somebody, your last name is Wrigley, and then you get married to somebody named Field, and you're like, You know, all of a sudden Harry Carey, the ghost, haunts you. Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win! And guess what? Here's the, I didn't see this coming story of the day. U.S. blames Hamas for Israeli execution of Palestinian medics. So we told you about the execution of the medics. So Tammy, our spokeswoman, that State Department, Tammy, I always have to, every time I hear the word Tammy, it always just reminds me of some chick I know down south. That was always just some loudmouth talking about how she was going to kick her ex-husband's ass and how that trailer is hers and how he can keep the kids because they're probably not even hers. I don't know, some shit. So the State Department yesterday blamed Hamas because Hamas gets everything. When asked about the Israeli execution of 15 Palestinian medics and rescue workers who were recovered from a mass grave in the southern Gaza city of Rafah. The 15 workers included 8 members of the Palestinian Red Cross, civil defense workers, and 1 UN staffer. We told you about that. So, and then there's that. But we'll get to there's Tammy. Tammy. Hey, girl. I saw you at the Piggly Wiggly the other day, Tammy. So this bitch, when asked about the comments from the UN State Department spokeswoman, Tammy Bruce, immediately blamed Hamas. I can tell you that for too long, Hamas has abused civilian infrastructure, cynically using it to shield themselves. Hamas's action have caused humanitarians to be caught in the crossfire. It's all Hamas's fault. Fuck you. Fuck you. I told you that at the Piggly Wiggly, and I'm telling you now, it's Hamas. When pressed on whether the U.S. would assess the situation since there's a chance Israeli forces used American weapons, Bruce said, every single thing that's happening in Gaza is happening because of Hamas. Every single dynamic. You know when my truck blew up last week? Hamas. You know when I fell asleep and that cigarette almost burnt up my trailer? Hamas. It's all Hamas. I don't give a fuck what you say. And the 20 gunshots and all this stuff. So, of course, and that's the thing. That's all part of the propaganda to reinforce this message that it's all Hamas. And people who aren't in the know or have no inkling of what's going on or have no desire to know the real truth, they'll go, yeah, fuck Hamas, man, fuck Hamas. So, judges weighing appeal by whistleblower who exposed cover-up of Australian war crimes in Afghanistan. So, you may have heard about David McBride, right? There he is right there. This, what's this from? Consortium News, yes. A 3-judge panel in the Australian capital is weighing an appeal by whistleblower David McBride that could determine if a soldier's duty is to serve the public or only his superior officers, even if it means covering up evidence of his nation's war crimes. The judges are also considering the question of whether Australian soldiers owe their allegiance to the British Crown or to the people of Australia. The 3 Court of Appeal judges have been deliberating for 4 weeks to determine if the trial judge erred in not permitting McBride a public interest defense. When classified evidence was removed from the courtroom during his trial, the former military lawyer was left with little choice but to plead guilty in November 2023 to breaching national security laws for leaking the war crimes story to the media. In blocking his ability to tell a jury his motive, the trial judge then sentenced McBride to a harsh 5 years and 8 months in prison, of which he served 11 months at the Alexander McConaughey Center in the Capital Territory. Looking fit, McBride appeared for his appeals hearing on March 3rd in a Canberra courtroom to a standing ovation from his supporters who filled the public gallery. He motioned for calm when one said loudly amidst the applause, "It looks like there is public interest in your case." Before court was called into session, a rally was held on the street outside. I guess that's part of the rally right there. McBride's case comes as one more incidents in an increasing tide of repression in Western countries against whistleblowing and free speech. WikiLeaks publisher Julian Assange was the most prominent of these cases in the past 5 years until the U.S. understood it would lose its extradition case and struck a plea deal in which Assange admitted he broke an unconstitutional U.S. Espionage Act that conflicts with the First Amendment. A British Terrorism Act has been used since October 2023 to detain and interrogate journalists for their criticism of Israel's genocide in Gaza. Berlin police have raided meetings in support of Palestine. Government-directed censorship on social media has grown in recent years in both the United States and Europe. And in the U.S., the Trump administration is seeking to deport a legal resident simply for leading anti-genocide protests on the campus of Columbia University. That's Mahmoud Khalil. Here in McBride's, Australia, a judge is deciding the case of a presenter who sued the ABC, that's the Australian broadcasting company, public broadcaster, claiming she was sacked or fired for sharing a Human Rights Watch tweet saying Israel was using starvation as a weapon of war. The Australian Zionist Federation, those assholes, is also considering whether to bring formal charges against journalist Mary Kostakidis, whom it brought before the Australian Human Rights Commission for alleged anti-Semitism for a series of her tweets. A McBride victory on appeal would be a stunning breakthrough against this disturbing trend. In 2014, McBride made internal allegations after learning of murders of Afghan civilians by Australian soldiers. He then began leaking evidence of the cover-up of the crimes by senior officials to the Australian Broadcasting Company, the Dollar Tree ABC, the national broadcaster, between 2014 and 2016. Australian Major General Justice Paul Brereton began an investigation in May of 2016 into the allegations. The ABC then broadcast a report in 2017 about the murder of innocent Afghans based on evidence supplied by McBride and a second whistleblower. In September 2018, McBride was arrested and charged with allegedly stealing government property in violation of the Criminal Code Act 1995. In March 2019, he was charged with 3 more alleged crimes in breach of the Defense Act of 1903, or Defense Act 1903, as well as unlawfully disclosing a government document contrary allegedly to the Crimes Act 1914. On June 5, 2019, the Australian Federal Police raided the ABC's Sydney headquarters for 8 hours and removed files. The Attorney General ultimately decided against prosecuting an ABC journalist, Dan Oakes, who had worked on the Afghan Files story. Brereton made his findings public in November 2020, pointing to credible information about Australian war crimes. The report accused Australian Special Forces of murdering 39 unarmed Afghans, but it did not implicate senior officers, which is kind of ridiculous. 3 years later, in March 2023, the first soldier was charged with murder, but it hasn't yet led to a trial. McBride went on trial in November 2023. The prosecution argued that McBride broke laws of military discipline by leaking to the Australian media. McBride's lawyers conceded in court that he indeed broke such regulations, but that he had a paramount duty to the nation that superseded military discipline. At the heart of the preliminary argument was the question, whom does a soldier serve? Trish McDonald, the chief prosecutor, said the concept of duty in the law is that it is not in the public interest to reveal classified information to the public. You're on a need-to-know basis. You've probably heard that before. And the public doesn't need to know about war crimes. McBride's primary duty, she said, was to follow orders. The accused was a legal officer. She asserted he was not appointed to inform the press. He contravened his official duty. In fact, there is a public interest in non-disclosure, the prosecutor argued. At trial, another King's counselor, Andrew Berger, implied that covering up alleged war crimes might be in the interests of Australia's ties to the U.S. Who's been doing plenty of war crimes forever. Under the U.S. Leahy law, the Pentagon and State Department are barred from funding foreign military units that violate human rights with impunity. Berger told the court it's a nuanced field, the very important relationship with Australia's foreign partners. The public interest in maintaining confidentiality outweighs the interest of open justice. Let me read that again. The public interest in maintaining confidentiality, I don't think it's the public's interest, outweighs the interest of open justice. The defense agreed that while McBride had broken military regulations, he had a duty to the nation to do so. Stephen Odgers, the chief defense counsel, gave an example of 2 ships on a collision course with the captain under strict military orders not to reveal the location of his ship. The captain had to disobey the order to avoid a collision. It would be a breach of a lawful order, he said, which would be a matter for a military tribunal, not a civilian court. Odgers also argued that an Australian soldier's duty is based on oath to serve the British sovereign, whose duty is to care for the interests of the entire nation. The defense arguments go nowhere, McDonald told the court. The first thing to notice about a soldier's oath is the wording, she said, and the word is serve. I thought the word was bird. In the context of McBride, it meant giving service to the Queen. Giggity. She said, serve here does not mean act in the public interest. It means nothing more or less than render service, said McDonald. She went on, serve means to a commander to fight or to obey in military actions, not in the context of interpreting an oath. To interpret serve to mean to act in the public interest, it is to turn on its head service to king or queen, she said. It's not for the soldier to do whatever he thinks is right. Well, or you could get robots to do that if you're just going to, like, take the humanity away from people. But is a soldier to fight and die to defend the nation or only the monarch? Nowhere in the oath does it refer to public interest or that a soldier must act in the public interest, she added. If it were, Parliament would have said so, she said. MacDonald quoted a 19th century reference on military justice and statutory powers, saying, "There's nothing so dangerous to the civil establishment of the state as an undisciplined or reactionary army." McBride's chief trial attorney, Odgers, countered that the duty to serve the sovereign does not require blind obedience to orders. He asked that the judge instruct the jury on the law that would allow it to decide on this. Odgers said in the 21st century, for the Crown to make assertion that to obey unquestionably the orders of superiors ignores Nuremberg and the acceptance in our society that members of the military have higher duties. The Nuremberg tribunal that tried Nazi war criminals established that a soldier had a duty to disobey unlawful orders. David Mossop, the trial judge, ruled on November 7, 2023, that he would instruct the jury, which was to be selected the following Monday, to disregard any public interest in the defense. There is no aspect of duty that allows the accused to act in the public interest contrary to a lawful order, he told the court. McBride's legal team tried to appeal that decision, but its application was denied by Supreme Court Chief Justice Lucy McCollum the same morning. In the afternoon, Mossop ordered the agents of the Attorney General's office could remove classified documents from the defense's possession, which McBride's team had intended to present in a highly redacted form to the jury. Because of those regressive rulings, McBride accepted his attorney's advice that, left with no viable defense, he should plead guilty. On being arraigned for a second time, a defiant McBride stood in courtroom SC7 before a microphone placed in front of him and pronounced guilty to each count read out to him. On the street outside the courthouse immediately afterwards, McBride's trial lawyer, Mark Davis, told reporters, "We received the decision just this afternoon," which was in essence to remove evidence from the defense. The Crown, the government, was given the authority to bundle up evidence and run out the back door with it. He is no longer able to put it before a jury. And we'll get down to the sentencing here. This is all on Consortium News, so if you want to check this out in full. McBride was sentenced to a draconian 5 years and 8 months in prison by Mossop on May 13th of last year. Mossop told the court at sentencing that McBride thought he knew better than the Australian Defence Force. He's more moral than the Australian Defence Force. It's imperative that others be generally deterred from holding such attitudes. Don't be a whistleblower. Don't you be a whistleblower, you motherfucker. That's basically what they're saying. Whether McBride's actions had caused harm was central to his sentence. His lawyers argued until the end on Tuesday that there was no evidence of harm and that the risk was minimal because he had given the material to professional journalists, which is the same thing that happened with Edward Snowden. Even the military admitted, his release, they didn't do any harm to national security. But still, they want to get him. But Mossop ruled Tuesday that the nature of the offending harm and a lack of contrition all give rise to the need to give general deterrence to prevent any further disclosures of this kind. Well, you know what? You wouldn't have whistleblowers if you weren't doing heinous shit, basically, right? If you weren't doing this shit, you wouldn't have people calling you out. So, you know, you're blaming the whistleblower instead of going after the motherfuckers who did war crimes. The judge quoted McBride as saying, "I never said I would cover up crimes for the government." Mossop told the court that McBride accessed documents and stored them in a personal folder. He then removed this information, some 237 docs, 209 of which were classified secret, and took them home, the judge said. The Australian Federal Police seized the documents from his home, giving rise to the charge of theft. The judge said McBride's lawyers argued his motivations was neither financial gain nor to aid Australia's enemies, that he believed he was not committing an offense. Mossop said McBride admitted to taking the documents, but in pursuit of a legal aim within the Protective Disclosure Act that McBride claimed he had a legal obligation to disclose. He showed no remorse, the judge said. Davis said McBride would appeal. He called it an extremely heavy sentence, particularly since the government conceded McBride caused no harm and did not personally benefit from. So, and there's more there, but I'll hang on just a second. Let me just do something here. I'll put this link in our YouTube chat here, if you want that. Actually, I'll put them in all three. So there's one for you. Okay, and then there's one for you. You get a link, and you get a link, and you get a link, and you get a link. Here you go. And here you go. So all that's going on there. So sorry, Facebook, I'm not doing yours. No, I'm kidding. I'll do it. Actually, let's just put that in there. And I think we should be good to go. All right. All right. Very good. Very good. All right. Sorry, we're going a little long here, but you can read that all for yourself. It's very frustrating and fascinating at the same time. So, how many more do we have? Okay, so we got some more here. We got more. Don't you worry your pretty little heads about that. So, clashes at Nigerian pro-Palestine protests leave 12 dead. You're probably going to see more of that. Not just in Nigeria. Clashes between protesters and authorities at a pro-Palestinian march organized by a Shia group in Nigeria left a dozen people dead, according to a government intelligence report seen by AFP on Saturday. 11 protesters and one soldier were killed, the report said, at the demonstration held by the Islamic movement in Nigeria, the IMN, on Friday in the capital Abuja. Amnesty International's Nigeria branch said soldiers fired live rounds at the protesters. The IMN has been outlawed by Nigerian authorities for advocating an Islamic revolution in the West African nation. However, at the time of its banning in 2019, researchers characterized it as more interested in protest than political violence. The march in Abuja and other cities in Nigeria was held in honor of Quds Day, or Jerusalem Day, which is marked annually in countries around the world in support of Palestine. IMN said on social media that the Nigerian army attacked the procession and several people sustained gunshot injuries without giving a toll. The intelligence report said that 19 people were injured and 295 others arrested. A soldier was also injured. Neither the Nigerian army nor the police responded to a request for comment. Amnesty International Nigeria described the protesters as perfectly within their right to hold a religious procession, adding there was no evidence they posed an imminent threat to life. What the? Hang on a second. All right. Woo. Okay. The intelligence report described the waving of flags at the protest as undermining Nigeria's sovereignty. Oh, flag waving. You evil, evil people. In August, an attack by IMN members killed 2 law enforcement officers, police said. In July 2021, after more than 5 years in prison, IMN leader Ibrahim Zakzaki and his wife were released by a court in Kaduna in the north of the country. A Shia clerk, Zakzaki has repeatedly called for an Iranian-style Islamic revolution in Nigeria, where the Muslim population is predominantly Sunni. Inspired by the Islamic Revolution in Iran in the late 70s, the IMN still maintains close ties with Tehran. Well, you know, all you got to do is just get you some American hostages and everything will be hunky-dory. Meanwhile, UK, the Quakers are getting in on the Discrimination Act, or the wrong end of it, as UK police raid Quaker meeting with tasers, arrest 6 at pro-Palestine gathering. There's a brave soul right there. The UK Met Police raided a Quaker meeting with tasers on Saturday, arresting 6 women who were attending a gathering for the Youth Demand protest organization. The organization describes itself as a youth-led, nonviolent civil resistance campaign that calls for the UK to stop arming Israel. Over 20 police disrupted the meeting at, 7:15 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. The Quaker said in a statement, calling it an aggressive violation of our place of worship. A video on Youth Demand's Facebook page showed a woman who claimed she attended the publicly advertised welcome talk and that police went on to seize attendees' phones and laptops. Paul Parker, the recording clerk for the Quakers in Britain, condemned the raid, adding, "No one has been arrested in a Quaker meeting house in living memory." Well, except for, that casino they had like about several years ago. That was, that's the thing. Freedom of speech, assembly, and fair trials are an essential part of free public debate, which underpins democracy, he added. The Met Police later confirmed they arrested 6 people at the gathering, stating this was done on suspicion of conspiracy to cause a public nuisance. The Met further said another 5 people were arrested on Friday for the same reason, specifying 4 arrests were made in London and 1 in Exeter. Exeter? I didn't even know she was in the room. What the heck? I didn't know I was in her. The police said the arrests were made because people were planning direct action in London next month. Youth Demand has stated an intention to shut down London over the month of April using tactics including swarming and roadblocks, a statement read. While the police said they absolutely recognize the importance of the right to protest, and then they went, I'm kidding. We hate it when you protest. The Quakers denounced the actions of the Met, stating they broke open the front door. That's SOP for those guys, without warning or ringing the bell first. The Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Act 2022 and the Public Order Act 2023 have criminalized many forms of protest and allow police to halt actions deemed too disruptive, the statement added. The raid on the meeting comes amid Israel's war on Gaza, which has killed over thousands and thousands of people. Earlier this year, a U.S.-based Quaker organization working for peace and social justice announced they would be canceling their planned advertising with the New York Times after the outlet refused to allow an ad referring to Israel's genocide in Gaza. The Quakers in the UK have a long history dating back to 1643 and have long been associated with pacifism and not using electricity, because that's evil. The group regularly campaigns for social justice movements and the rights of the incarcerated. They have also historically been part of efforts to mediate conflicts and refuse to fight in wars. Actually, that's probably the Amish. I don't think the Amish are Quakers. That could be something else. So I didn't mean to lump them together, but somebody ain't using electricity and they're probably happy about it. Getting 20 people to raise a barn. And finally, in our thing here, we go to Mint Press News as Israeli lawsuits target Americans, a new threat to the First Amendment under Trump. So this is Zionists coming after people in the courts. A wave of lawsuits filed by Israeli plaintiffs against pro-Palestinian American citizens, advocacy groups, and media outlets is paving the way for the AIPAC-backed nonprofit killer bill to take effect. The claims, largely unsubstantiated, appear designed to justify what critics say could amount to a near total shutdown of political expression around the Israeli-Palestinian issue. On Monday, the latest in a series of legal actions targeted the prominent New York-based activist group Within Our Lifetime, as well as Columbia University chapters of Jewish Voice for Peace and Students for Justice in Palestine. According to plaintiff Shlomi Ziv, the groups were allegedly funded by Hamas. Hamas. Ziv, who was previously held captive in Gaza and worked as a security guard on October 7, 2023, claims that his captors told him that they were financing student groups at Columbia. The accusation is based entirely on hearsay. Still, the lawsuit's intent appears clearly aimed at dismantling the student movement at Columbia. The complaint even names Mahmoud Khalil, who's facing deportation. Khalil's alleged offense, exercising his First Amendment rights, despite pro-Israel organizations accusing him of supporting Hamas. The Canary Mission, those assholes, a group notorious for doxing and smearing college students, could produce a video showing Khalil standing near somebody chanting "From the river to the sea." There's some stuff by Glenn Greenwald there. This is not Ziv's first legal foray, or Ziv's, whatever his name is. In February, he and two other Israeli former hostages relied on refiled an amended complaint against the U.S.-based media outlet Palestine Chronicle after their original case was dismissed for lack of evidence. There's always a lack of evidence, folks. The new lawsuit filed in federal court in Washington state is backed by the National Jewish Advocacy Center, led by Mark Goldfeder. Goldfeder, he's the man with the Jewish lawsuits, well, the Zionist lawsuit. A former advisor to Israel's permanent mission to the UN, Goldfeder's organization has attempted similar lawsuits, including one against the AP for allegedly providing material support for terrorism, as well as cases targeting UNRWA USA and Students for Justice in Palestine. In the suit against Palestine Chronicle, Ziv claims that contributor Abdallah al-Jamal was a Hamas operative who held Israeli captives in his home. Based on that allegation, Ziv argues that the outlet provided material support for terrorism by publishing al-Jamal's work. When Israeli forces killed al-Jamal and several family members, CNN reported that Israeli officials offered no evidence for their claim that he was a Hamas fighter. Despite the lack of evidence, neoconservative think tanks such as the Foundation for Defense of Democracies helped him amplify the narrative. Qatar-funded Al Jazeera also came under fire because al-Jamal had contributed articles to its site. In February, Israeli citizen Morish Schneider filed a separate lawsuit targeting Al Jazeera, alleging the network aided Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in spreading propaganda and inciting violence. The legal action was supported by Stand With Us, a pro-Israel advocacy group known for coordinating with the Israeli government on similar efforts. While few of these lawsuits are expected to succeed in court, they align with broader efforts by pro-Israel lobbyists and the Trump-aligned right to clamp down on criticism of Israel. In late 2024, Congress passed House Resolution 9495, dubbed the Nonprofit Killer Bill, despite widespread condemnation from civil liberties organizations. The bill empowers the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury to revoke tax-exempt status of nonprofit organizations based on classified evidence and without filing formal charges. That's convenient. This creates a legal gray area where lawsuits, even those lacking evidence, could be used as a pretext to strip organizations of their legal protections. Although Students for Justice in Palestine is not a registered nonprofit, it receives funding from American Muslims for Palestine, which is. As ICE continues to detain and deport U.S. residents and student visa holders, many of whom are not accused of any crime but have merely spoken out against Israel's war in Gaza, critics warn that a coordinated legal and legislative strategy is underway to criminalize dissent. Amid a wave of ICE detentions and deportations targeting U.S. residents and student visa holders, none of whom are accused of any crime beyond speaking out against Israel actions in Gaza, it's not difficult to imagine an AIPAC-backed bill being weaponized against American citizens. Should that occur, it would mark a dangerous escalation in Trump's ongoing assault on the First Amendment. And I guess that's it. So, yeah. And that's the rule. There is, we're going to try and tie these up in the courts as much as possible, and make people think that we have no evidence, for one thing. That's a common theme too. None of these people who are claiming the atrocities against Jewish people have any evidence of any of this shit. That's when you know fuckery's afoot. When there's no evidence, well, that's when you know. So I could say, yeah, there was a UFO just landed outside the building here. You get any pictures of it? No. Is your camera phone working? Oh yeah. I just didn't take a picture of it. But trust me, bro. Exactly. Trust me, bro. That's their evidence. So that's your fucked up propaganda watch for today. Brought to you by Snickers, where laughing is illegal. Finally today, you would think this would be an April Fool's kind of thing, but it's not. This actually happened because, crazy world we live in. As a Bulgarian football club, Arda Kardzali apologized after holding minutes of silence for a former player who's still alive. He thought he was dead. So there's a football, if you're not. A Bulgarian football club have apologized for holding a minute's silence for a former player who is still alive. Arda Kardzali, which is located in the southern Bulgarian town of Kardzali, and play in the country's top division, held the minute's silence in honor of Petko Ganchev. Petko, that's nice. Before Sunday's game against Levski Sofia, both teams lined up near the center circle before kicking off in the 1-1 draw, bowing their heads to mourn Ganchev. But before the match was over, Arda posted on their Facebook page saying they had received wrong information about Ganchev's death. And the club said the management of PFC Arda would like to express a huge apology to the former Arda player Petko Ganchev and his relatives after the club received wrong information about his death. I don't know how you say oopsie sauce in Bulgaria. We wish Petko Ganchev many more years of good health and to enjoy the success of Arda. The post appeared to have been deleted by Monday evening, to which Ganchev said, "Hey, at least you're thinking about me, right? My kids, they never come to see me." All right, well, I thought that was kind of funny that, let's have a moment of silence. He's like, hey, what, are you trying to kill me? I'm not dead. Was that the Body Python from the Holy Grail with their bring out your dead. Bring out your dead. I'm not dead. I'm feeling better. Delightful. Well, folks, that's the end of this horrible show on a April 1st for you. No fooling. You guys are the best. I appreciate all of you who stuck around to watch and are hanging out, all that good stuff. If you like what you heard, if you're new, if you're just kind of lurking, you're like, I don't know about this guy, but I'll give him a shot. If you want to like, share, and subscribe, I appreciate that. We also have donation links in the description down below. We also got them scrolling over here too. You want to help us out monetarily, that's great. If you wanted to share the links, that helps too. We appreciate all, and all the help is appreciated. So not quite as long as Friday, but almost 3 hours. Pretty good bit. We had some long stories in there too, but I wanted to get that information out to some people who may not have been privy to that information before regarding, especially regarding censorship and these deportations like that. So I guess barring some miracle of science where we have a magic show somewhere between now and Wednesday, now and Friday, we will be back on Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. Mountain Time, 8 a.m. Pacific Time on YouTube, Rockfin, Rumble, and Facebook. Sorry for, I think there was some sort of buffering thing earlier, so, but it seems to have worked itself out, which is, well, it should. Let's see. Yeah, so that's it for me. You guys have a great day. We'll see you on Friday, or maybe before. I don't know. Sometimes I'm precious and I just want to pop in and say hi. Have a good one, and tell your mom I said hi, and I'll be over later. What?
This is City Alpha 5!